All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's planning board meeting, Tuesday, July 16th. We will begin this morning with a workshop item, and this is for 42 Ferry Road, map 22, lot 34, and this is a residential condominium proposal for 29 dwelling units. Emily?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We've received this. We've started to review. This is a very, very early review on this. We put together some considerations from staff, including encouraging the applicant to consider retaining trees, green spaces on the property. In other applications where we've seen units throughout the site, we've asked applicants to consider like clustering units on the site to provide more open space areas and green space for property owners. We've asked questions about snow storage, buffering. Certainly in the future would expect to see like architectural considerations, addressing trash collection, condo docks, sewer and water, and then like the standard lighting, landscaping plan and full details required to meet the requirements. So this would come before you as a city planning review for a preliminary and final subdivision, conditional use and site plan review when the applicant is ready to submit. A neighborhood meeting would also be required, and we have received early comments from fire and water resource recovery. As we receive other comments, we'll forward them along to the applicant. Again, this is just very early on the process, so the applicant is looking for your feedback. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily.
Good evening.
Austin?
How are you?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Austin Fagan. For those of you who don't know me, I'm with BH2M, here representing Diversicare Development, LLC. The proposed development is a 29-unit condominium at 42 Ferry Road, as Emily said. The units will be served by public water and sewer. Details on that will be worked out as we get into the formal design of the project. As proposed, the site would consist of single-family units, two-family units, and also multifamily units. The multifamily units would be a conditional use in this zone. So we are looking for some feedback from the board on whether or not you feel it would fit into the general character of the neighborhood. The site does abut Atlantic Heights, which appears to be a multifamily assisted living development. So we feel that it does fit in with the multifamily concept, but be looking for your feedback. We have reviewed staff comments. There's really nothing earth-shattering there. Plan to address those prior to a formal submission of the design, but would be happy to answer any questions the board might have and receive any feedback you have. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Austin. Board members, any questions for staff or for the applicant?
I guess initially I'm just wondering about landscaping and buffering. This is a pretty wooded lot right now, correct?
Yes. Correct.
So is it your plan to try to retain some of the existing vegetation? Is it
I would say
good quality stuff?
Yeah. So I haven't personally been on site at the moment, but I know typically we try to keep as much of a vegetated buffer on the exterior of the property as we can. The site itself, as shown, is pretty well used up in terms of footprint between stormwater infrastructure, housing infrastructure, things of that nature. So we would likely look to have an exterior buffer with some additional landscaping provided. That being said, it has been brought up about clustering units possibly in order to provide some more green space. That's definitely something I can talk with the applicant about considering for the project.
Jim?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. With respect to the multifamily units, those are the ones that are in the back of the property?
That's correct, yes.
And you have, I imagine they're going to be two stories. Can you give us some sense as to, the dimensions of those buildings?
Absolutely, yeah. So I believe the intent at this point would be to have a two-story building, 4 units on each story. So they would be 2 8-unit buildings. Realistically, so 2 one-floor units and then your roof. So you're looking under 30 feet, I would imagine, or around 30 feet for height. typical, main architectural style, gabled ends, things of that nature. But yeah, that's the extent of what I know at the moment.
And I saw in the overview that Atlantic Heights does butt right up against this property.
Yep.
It wasn't clear to me, is there a lot of buffering between Atlantic Heights and what you are hoping to construct here on this lot? Like, I mean, did Atlantic Heights really go right up to the property line, or, within a feet of it, or what's that look like?
Oh, Jim, is your mic on? I can't hear you very well.
Tells me that all the time. So I'm sorry, it was not on. Apologize. Did you hear my question?
I've got you, and to go over it, the question was about buffering with the existing Atlantic Heights site. I did look at an aerial image before I came here today. It looks like the access road around Atlantic Heights is more or less around the perimeter of the property. There is an existing vegetated buffer, the width of which I don't know. I think it somewhat reflects the zoning requirements of, I believe it's a 20 or 25-foot vegetated buffer. Nothing much more significant than that, but I would say that it's going to be similar to what is going to be the minimum requirement for this project.
I mean, just conceptually, I'm not opposed to multi-family dwellings in that area, particularly the way you have it at the back of the lot. I think that's a great idea.
Thank you.
Because I think, I mean, that is an area of Ferry Road which has all sorts of buildings and different shapes and sizes, and some are multifamily, some aren't. But I think the way you have it designed, I think, looks good.
Thank you.
Some of the other questions I had to do with like snow storage, and it looks like, like fire trucks and emergency vehicles could easily access the property, but what thoughts do you have about the snow removal and emergency vehicles? And, I mean, do you think the turning radius is sufficient for those big fire trucks?
I would say that that's something that we can look at with a turning schematic that we can do in AutoCAD. Realistically, with what's shown right now, I believe the intent would be where you have units 10 and 11 at the end of a roadway segment, and then it cuts over to the multifamily. That would more or less be your hammerhead turnaround area. And then if you pulled into the multifamily area, it would be more or less backing out of that, which would be, without a scale on me, I'd say around 100, 150 feet of backing. We'll have to work with the fire department to see if that's acceptable for them, but definitely something that we'll take into consideration with the final design. Additionally, in terms of snow storage, it's definitely a tight site as shown. It would just be along the roadways next to homes, things like that. But once again, if we look into a more potential cluster design, or some area opens up depending on what the stormwater requirements are, we can figure it out for the next submission on that.
And finally, and I know this is a small issue, but I imagine a lot of projects like this now, for like mail delivery, you'll have a series of like mailboxes right near the roadway.
I would imagine.
Is that your plan?
I believe that's the typical thing. A lot of projects aren't allowed to have single mailboxes anymore. The cluster is typically the go-to. So I would imagine that's what you're going to see on this project as well.
That's all I had, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I had noted a few of my things. We talked a little bit about buffering, community mailbox, dumpster location, particularly the turning movements for the dumpster. Looks a little unique. More on a daily functional basis, with having the multi-units much further in, the common everyday parcel to UPS, FedEx, there's not much maneuverability there, particularly when there are cars there during the daytime, parked. That would be, an area I'd like to see some more detail on, how they could safely turn around and not have them backing up, particularly backing up with cars parked on both sides. I had a little bit, I know it's very conceptual, but the crosswalk is kind of starting on the, by the multifamily on the southerly side, and then it's crossing over onto the northerly side. And I kind of see the multi-unit building being tucked in the back. That's going to be generating much more traffic than the single units out front. I don't know if there needs to be some sort of an inner development crosswalk to get them from one side to the other as to why, you decided not to continue the crosswalk onto the southerly side all the way out.
So in terms of the crosswalk, are you talking about the cross-hatched areas directly at the center of each building?
No, I'm just kind of looking, it looks like you have a sidewalk proposed, because as you know, we require inner development sidewalks.
Yep.
But between units 7 and 12, it seems like we're transitioning from one side of the
okay.
roadway to the other.
Okay, yeah. I'm picking up.
So
what you're
if
saying.
that's kind of, you had mentioned that might be kind of a turnaround area, I think you meant for a fire truck, but I'm thinking of, the daily FedEx deliveries and UPS, and our society is very much shifting to some of that, the commodities delivered to the home, so the volume that you might have with 16 units in there could be a fair number of truck movements. Just a little bit of thought for that pedestrian access and circulation.
Absolutely.
Like I said, then where the dumpster could possibly fall in there in the community mailbox. Buffering is a concern, but I think I'm still trying to get a real sense of the multi-unit development in this area. I know it really meets some of the goals that have been outlined with the city for infill development. There is public water, there's public sewer. I'm not so sure that it's cohesive with the existing neighborhood, in my opinion. And maybe if you come forward, you could give a couple of examples, at least in this area, maybe within, the 600 feet range or so of similar multifamilies. I know there's one just after the railroad tracks, but other than that, when we start talking about the Atlantic Heights, that's a very specialized community. That's very much a senior community. I believe it's progressive living, but the volume and intensity of traffic, intensity of use outside for recreation could change. And I do echo some of the staff concerns about green space and trying to preserve something on this lot. And I also see your situation, it's a very tight lot to try to fit all of this in and maximize what you'd like out of it. So I guess, yeah, I think I need a little bit more understanding, a little more justification as to why you feel the multi-units fit in here versus, a very tight-knit, single-unit type subdivision, which might be easier to achieve some safer vehicular access. Just kind of my thoughts. And obviously, lighting plans, layouts, and whatnot. But those are my early thoughts. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Any other board member thoughts? I myself, Austin, I share a lot of the thoughts that our board members have here. Buffering is going to be a big one, I suspect. You're utilizing quite a bit of the lot efficiently, it seems. But I'm curious as to how the buffering is going to come into play. I agree with the other comments and staff comments as well. The conditional use-wise, again, for the multifamily, I think conceptually, I'm not opposed to it, but I, as along with Jeff, have a lot of questions in how does it come together in reality? There's a lot to it. We have a whole list of 9 or so items as well to meet the conditional use criteria. So I think once you put together, once you elaborate on that concept there, I think you'll answer some of those questions. Architecturally, how it fits in. I mean, you have some single families there, and then you have some duplexes as well. So that, you know, contextually in that neighborhood, that's something we'll have to look at and address as well. But I think right at this moment, I'm not opposed to it,
Okay,
but curious how it comes together.
okay,
And I think the big piece to it is it's going to be the buffering and how it's perceived. The Atlantic Heights is set back quite a ways. You don't see that from Ferry Road, and it doesn't seem like there's a lot of elevation change in here. It looks like grade goes up 10 feet, down, levels off a little bit.
Yep.
I guess my point is there's, I support them in the back. I think that's the right decision. I guess from what I see here, I think we're going to see them. So I think we're going to see all of that. So I'm just thinking about, you know, how we're going to see that from Ferry Road.
okay.
A lot of C's in that comment, but other than that, nothing else jumping out at me of concern. I do, when we've talked about it, Jeff, on another project as well, is how the centralized mailbox works, and how there's space and vehicular circulation around it, and multiple deliveries throughout the day, and how that turning movement works as well. So seeing how that comes together
Okay.
would be nice.
And, Mr. Chair, I think there's also another multifamily building sort of across the street. I'm trying to remember, I used to, many years ago, I lived at 10 Ferry Road, so I'm very familiar with that area. And I thought, with the cemeteries behind it, but I thought there's a huge yellow building there that I thought was multifamily. So I think in addition to the one that Jeff was mentioning, right after the railroad tracks, I think there's another example just a little further down the road. So at least in this area of Ferry Road, I don't think having multifamily dwellings is out of character necessarily, but maybe you could look into that more.
Absolutely. I appreciate that lead. I'll get out there, figure out what we got for multifamily uses and how far away they are, and try and, you know, let you know how this fits into the
Yeah.
scenic character of everything.
Yeah,
So,
I think Jim, you're correct. I think they're more of a condition where it's a converted farmhouse or a converted larger home that sort of turned into 3 or 4 units. So that's sort of where I'm saying, yes, the multifamily can work. A big block building, that's sort of row house, I don't think would be successful. But the overall multifamily, I think, could be if done well. So,
okay. Absolutely.
you have thoughts, Jeff?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I guess you could see I'm still thinking, but
Yeah.
yeah, I agree that some of those existing multifamilies that are in that area or converted older large homes, or the one that I'm thinking of, I think it's Pembroke. I think it was a bus depot or bus garage at one time. But that one is very unique in how the entrance is very set back. There's a lot of green space in there. It's very different landscaping-wise, and recreation for the tenants that are there. There's a huge lawn in the back. I don't know if we necessarily have that with this concept here. And I struggle, you know, we're under pressure to allow infill and promote higher densities when sewer and water is available, but we also have to weigh out and protect the integrity and character of our existing neighborhoods. And for me, it puts us in a very difficult position. And I think that this is just a very drastic, stark change from what is in the relatively immediate area. And I would be interested in seeing, you know, everything we've talked about, how the buffering would play out. How would it really, truly fit in, other than I don't want to just say I checked the box and yes, we allowed some infill and we have, you know, 29 units that have been built, and all the neighbors are going, this isn't, you know, the property that I invested in and signed up for. So those are just some of my early thoughts as I look at this. It's going to be basically a completely wiped out site, no vegetation other than what's planted from day, you know, the day after construction. So I just want to understand a little bit how it's going to fit and work. So thank
Yep,
you.
I agree, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I think aside from single-family and two-family, which there are certainly few around, the yellow building that Jim's talking about was certainly built as an apartment building, but it's a big block, but it's singular, I think, in that neighborhood, unless you look back at Atlantic Heights, and certainly some of the buildings at Atlantic Heights have some real mass to them. So, yeah, be interesting to see conceptually how it works, you know, as far as how much space is there really going to be around these units, and what are you going to see from the road?
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, something that we can look into would be, you know, potentially getting you an idea of, you know, a drawing or a concept to give you a look at what it might look like with the multifamily in the back, and, you know, give you a visual scale of what you would be seeing.
The, Austin, had there been a concept or a sketch plan internally that you were able to look at maybe some of the single-family units closer to the street, or setting them back from the street and giving a little bit more front yard? I know you're not quite maximizing the potential of the site there with the 29 versus the 32 units. Just curious.
So are we saying in relation to Ferry Road or to the internal roadway?
In relationship to Ferry Road.
I don't believe we do have any concepts that have anything, you know, further off of the roadway. It's definitely something that we can look into with a future iteration. I do agree, you know, we're right up on it, so potentially, you know, units 7, 8, 9, 12, and 13 are the single family, so potentially move those towards the front of the site so it fits the character a little bit better. Definitely something that we will take into consideration with the future submission.
Yeah, I'm just thinking the language of the Ferry Road with, I know this portion, some of on the riverside, a lot of the properties and the structures are a little bit closer to the street, and then opposite, on the north side, it's a little bit more larger lawns. The building is really front to the street, so the first units here are sort of duplex on the side, with not a whole lot of yard, so it's gonna have quite a bit of, you know, different language there.
Mm-hmm. And in terms of the, you know, being set back from the internal road, I know the intent with this, those units are intended to have a garage space, I believe. Other parking would be in the driveway. So, you know, if we can sort of alter or stagger those driveways to get a little bit of differentiation in there, that might, you know, make your eye wander a bit more than seeing things that are lined up. So we can also take that into consideration. As long as we can get a vehicle safely in the driveway and outside of the sidewalk and the roadway area, we can definitely work with altering how the houses are staggered.
Any other board member thoughts?
Awesome.
All right, great, thank you.
Thanks for your help. Appreciate it.
All right, and with that, we will move into our main meeting here. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed members of the Planning Board and valued community representatives, I welcome you all to this evening's assembly of the Saco Planning Board. As chairman, it is my privilege to convene this gathering dedicated to the thoughtful planning and development of our community. Today, we come together with a shared commitment to shape the future of our city in a manner that reflects our values, respects our heritage, and fulfills the needs of our residents both now and in the future. Our agenda tonight contains important matters, each requiring our careful consideration, expertise, and collaboration. As we engage in our deliberations, let us remember the profound impact these decisions will have on the lives of all, keeping in mind we are residents like you. Together, we must embrace the responsibility entrusted to us by our community, working diligently and thoughtfully to chart a course that fosters growth, prosperity, and harmony. With that, I would like to call this meeting of the Saco Planning Board together and look forward to a productive discussion and meaningful outcomes that lie ahead. With us this evening, we have myself, the chairman, Matt Provenzel, and to my left, our vice chair, Joyce Leary Clark, and to her left, our planning board member, Jeff Brucho, and then to my right, Carrie Lynn Lane and Jim Mollier. Our city staff members with us this evening are our planner, Emily Cole Prescott, and Lisa Harmon, along with Phil Hatch, our Ward 5 City Council liaison. Our first item on our agenda this evening is our approval of minutes, the first being July 1st site walk, and then our July 2nd draft minutes. Do board members have any comments or edits on any of those items?
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the minutes from the July 1st site walk.
Second.
Thank you for the motion, Joyce, and the second, Jeff, to approve the site walk notes from July 1st. Those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes.
And Mr. Chair, I move to approve the planning board meeting minutes for July 2nd.
Second.
Thank you, Joyce, for the motion and Jeff for the second. Any additional discussion on approving the minutes for the July 2nd meeting? Those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0 to accept the minutes as presented. Our next item on this evening's agenda is our public comment period. This is an opportunity for any members of the public to come before the planning board and ask questions or present any concerns. If there are any members that would like to speak, please step to the podium and state your name and address for the record. All right, seeing none, we will continue with our agenda this evening. Our next item is Blaine Street and Roebuck Avenue. This is map 40, lots 3, 4, 9, 10, and 11. And this is for a single-family residential development by Seacoast Land Acquisitions presented by Sebago Technics. And this evening is a application of completeness review for final subdivision. Emily?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We've just gone through and given you the application checklist. Everything's pretty complete here. We did send it back out to staff reviewers just to make sure if there's anything pending, did they get that information to us. There was a review memo which Joe issued June 25th. The applicant's already responded, and Joe has said he's all set and recommended conditions of approval. So the next step is really for the board to determine whether the application is complete and then to schedule its hearing.
All right. Thank you, Emily. Any questions from board members for Emily at this moment? With us, the applicant, if you want to give a brief introduction.
Pretty much, my engineer's not here tonight, sorry, she had to go to a funeral last second. Yeah, no, pretty much what Emily said, everything's been complete. We've kind of gone over any comments that we've gotten from Public Works or any other departments. We've met and complied with everything. So at this point, we've gotten no more comments back. Everybody seems pretty happy. So we're ready to move forward with your blessing.
All right, thank you. Any questions for the applicant? So, Emily, I saw there was the draft homeowners association document in there. And then I saw a note about the paper street, but was there anything specific from the city attorney regarding any of that paper street discussion?
So we reviewed the paper street before the last preliminary subdivision review.
Right.
And so I believe all those questions have been addressed. I did send the condo documentation to Tim Murphy. He had one comment, which was pretty minor, and I sent that along to the applicant.
Okay. I'm just sort of going through some of the conditions of approval from preliminary and just making sure that there are no changes from there. All right, thank you. Any additional questions for board members, thoughts or concerns on this application for completeness review?
Mr. Chair, if I may,
Yes, Jeff?
I move to find the final subdivision application review complete.
Second.
Thank you for the motion, Jeff, and the second, Joyce. Any additional discussion on the motion to find the application complete? Those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0 to find the application complete.
Mr. Chair, I'll move to schedule a public hearing for August 13th, 2024.
I'll second.
Thank you for the motion, Jim, and the second, Carrie Lynn. Any additional discussion on the motion to schedule the public hearing for August 13th? Those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0 to schedule a public hearing for August 13th, 2024. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Our next item on the agenda is 872 Portland Road. This is map 60, lot 9, map 61, lot 1-1. And this is for a new automobile dealership and associated site improvements. And the applicant is DSR Motor Group, represented by Sebago Technics. This, as well, is a application of completeness review, and this is for site plan and conditional use. This is in the Portland Road zoning district. Emily?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have here that we will be looking at an automobile dealer, which is a conditional use in this district. You're asked to hear from the applicant, review whether the application is complete. We do have some departmental reviews from the fire department, from water resource recovery, and from the public works department, from our city engineer. So there are still outstanding comments that the applicant is working to address. Some things we've asked about are design guidelines and review standards. We've provided there what this is falling under, which is Chapter 230, 179, and site location. So you're asked to review the information and schedule your public hearing. In the interim, the applicant is asked to address the comments and has received the comments that we have to date. And if you need to plug into the technology.
You have it for me, thank you.
Thank you, Emily.
Good evening. My name's Henry Hess, representing the applicant tonight from Saco Technics. As you're aware, as application complete, or review of a complete application here in Saco, it's a 17 or just over 17,000, it's about 17,600 square foot building proposed on largely an existing parking lot area with a slight expansion of the impervious to accommodate some parking and grading, as well as the site drainage that's going to be required in stormwater treatment. Right now, the plan's currently proposing to use the existing curb cuts that are out there. And as part of that, they'll be narrowing the curb cut. One of the curb cuts is currently, it's about 82, 84 feet wide. We'll be narrowing that down to 36. So really defining the entry point a little bit better, creating a little bit more of a safety arrival point. They'll have enough parking on site with 11 customer parking spaces, 25 employees, and then the additional parking really being for inventory, as is pretty usual for the car industry. We are working with staff right now in the treatment, stormwater treatment, and treating for stormwater general standards, treating at least 95% of the existing impervious and over 80% of the 95% of the proposed impervious and over 80% of the existing impervious. But we're still working through some of the final treatment options, and we'd love to present that to you guys as we go forward in the public hearing. All our services are currently anticipated through Portland Road. We've already received the federal permit for the self-verification form for wetland fill in the rear of the property there. Still trying to get up a visual for you so you can see that. But if that doesn't come up for you, I'll just keep going. Oh, there we go. So as I was saying, there's a building located in the center, largely on a mostly existing parking lot there. But certainly we look for the review of the board here and the application. If there's any questions from the board, I'd be happy to take them. And I yield my time back to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Any immediate questions from board members for the applicant? Henry, I had one. So there's currently a small structure on the property, correct? Is that correct?
Yep. It's a small, oh gosh, couldn't be more than 20 by 40 or 20 by 30 down there. Yep, small building. That'll be removed.
Okay. So this is sort of just south of the Chevrolet dealership. Is that correct?
Correct. Yep.
Okay. Thoughts or questions from board members?
Go ahead.
Jeff?
Yes, Mr. Chair. For as far as completeness, I know that the traffic peer review had caught a couple of things. Basically recalculating for the square footage of the building was at 18,700, and the calculation used 17,600. And also updating some of the high crash data to the most recent data of 2021 and 23. And I think the peer review also picked up the curb cut, and I'm just trying to get a little bit of my bearings, because the city engineer had mentioned it as well, about possible alignment of an intersection that'll basically be formed with possibly on the other side of the street for the middle school location. And they seemed pretty strong that they would, I interpreted they weren't really in agreement with the placement of your curb cut to optimize the signalization in the future. And I was just wondering if I was misinterpreting that, or if you could weigh in a little bit. I'm sure you saw that review from the city engineer, and I was wondering why that may not work for you. If you could elaborate a little bit, please.
Yeah, that's a great question. A lot of that is kind of bent around looking at the circulation of the site for not only customers, but large tractor trailers, and getting their circulation and turning movements on the interior as well. It's not a comment that we're ignoring by any means. It's something we're considering and looking at. Certainly what was submitted in the April timeframe, and that's what's before you now. So it's certainly a comment we're open to considering, but it's not as a part of this current plan at the moment from that April submission.
So, and for more clarification, so kind of on the northerly boundary from the existing pavement area, you will be able to traverse from one lot to another internally, correct?
That is correct, yep.
So is there any reason that some of your circulation concerns, particularly with delivery trucks, couldn't be worked out with some sort of an agreement with the neighboring property, where you would both be in need of delivery, deliveries of inventory?
I would say it's certainly not a problem to have that discussion and consider that comment. I understand where you're coming from there, Jeff, and I think that's valid, and it's something we can certainly consider.
Just trying to play on what we can do to try to get that curb cut, closed up. Route 1 is a very, very congested area, or high crash area, and if we can get it in better alignment for the intersection, that sounds like the powers to be have pretty good insight that's coming. And if it's only for interior circulation of the delivery of inventory, anything that could be proposed as an agreement or plan to make that maybe beneficial for both parcels would be, in my mind, a good idea. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Jim?
Mr. Chair, I shared Jeff's concern about that. I was curious about that too, although it wasn't clear to me where the future signalized intersection might be in relation to this very, very large front on, if you look at these two parcels that have somewhat common ownership now, right? But to the extent that those could be lined up, I think that would be a great advantage, not only for your project, but certainly for traffic in the area, so there's less confusion. People either trying to turn at the intersection, and then if your entrance is jogged off by 30 feet from the intersection, it's going to be pretty ineffective, it seems to me, for accessing your property from that particular location. So I would echo Jeff's concerns that would be useful to consider for a possible realignment of the curb cut.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you. Any other thoughts from board members?
Mr. Chair, if there are no other comments, I looked at the checklist, and it looks like all the boxes were checked off. Understanding there's more work to be done, but some of that can be done at the public hearing and later review. So I'll move to find the application complete.
Thank you for the motion, Jim.
I'll second.
Second by Joyce, thank you. Any additional discussion on the motion? Those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I will vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0 to find the application complete.
Thank you for your time, everyone.
We have,
And I think, Mr. Chair, we need to schedule a public hearing.
yes,
So I'll move to schedule a public hearing for August 13th, I believe? Yes, August 13th.
thank you for the motion, Jim.
I'll second.
Thank you for the second, Joyce. Any additional discussion on scheduling a public hearing for August 13th? Those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I'll vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0 to schedule a public hearing for August 13th. Thank you.
Thank you again for your time. Appreciate it.
Mr. Chair, before Henry leaves, I noticed there's also a question from staff about having a site walk for this project.
Thank you, Joyce. How does the board feel? Is there any interest in a site walk for this particular item? Jeff?
Thank you. I would be in support of it, particularly where there was some concern about the sidewalk with an esplanade and kind of, and closing up the curb cuts. And maybe we can get a better sense from, our engineering staff, our public works engineer, as to where the other opposing side of the street would be, so that we could all get our bearings about how much we might be considering moving this, or how it would be in better alignment with the site. So I would be in favor of a site walk.
Thank you. Any other board member thoughts on a site walk?
I agree, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Joyce?
agree.
Okay. I support it as well. We had a similar project with, just a little bit further down the road on Route 1 that we had a site walk, and it was beneficial, especially with traffic and seeing that. So, Emily, do we have a time that we could schedule a site walk? Perhaps, if the board is in agreement, I think today's site walk before the meeting worked as well. If that works for board members.
Yeah, we're not going to be running through the woods with this, so we should be able to get it done in less than an hour.
So, Mr. Chair, did we want to do July 29th?
We could do July 29th, if that works for other board members.
I believe July 29th should work.
And the applicant, of course. That's a Monday before our special.
Excuse me, what time on Monday?
5 o'clock.
Yeah, excellent.
Great, thank you. All right. I believe we've captured everything. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks for your time.
All right, moving on, our next item this is for Saco Island East. This is map 37, lot 6. And this is a site plan amendment request and a continued hearing review. Do you have anything to add on this one, Emily?
Just at the last at the site walk, we gave you site walk notes. One of the questions that came up in reviewing connectivity along York Hill area was ownership records. So we did provide a list of ownership records on that side of the road to try to help maybe answer that question. And we'd be happy to provide anything else that the board may need. This came from our assessor database, so I thank the assessing department for the help on it.
Great, thank you. Any questions for Emily? Jeff?
Did we have a response? I believe the code enforcement was looking at the fall protection.
I think I need to still follow up on that. So I will make sure to get that as well.
All right, thank you. And the applicant is with us this evening. Would you like to give a brief presentation or any update or anything, if any, from our site walk?
Just so everyone knows what this is, so that it's clear and I can open it up for the record, there's a transportation. I don't know if board members remembered my saying in a previous memo that the applicant was going to pay a fee toward the signalization. So this is an agreement that Tim Murphy drafted with staff to go over the terms of that fee amount, and this is the final version I've asked the applicant to bring. We usually don't accept final versions of things in the meetings, but since the applicant's handed it to me, if you want, we can give you a copy of it, but that's what that is. It's been vetted by Tim Murphy, and it's his original signature, because we need the wet signature.
All right, as long as it's part of the record, I think we're okay.
We supplied
It's
it.
not what you're reviewing tonight. It's relative
Correct.
to fulfilling another condition for the traffic signal. But I just want to make sure it's clear when someone hands me an envelope in the meeting as to what it is.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I supplied Emily the electronic version 10 days ago, and I was gone for a week, and I told her I'd bring the original to the meeting tonight, so that's what I did.
All right, thank you.
I think the only thing that so the several things we're here tonight to talk about are the minor modifications to the site plan, which include adding a 3-car garage, adding a mail room, and a kiosk so that the U.S. Postal Service can deliver mail in a sheltered environment for the 24 units that we expect to be there. There was a couple of granite block walls that are less than 4 feet tall that were added to the plan. I think the big, the larger question was the recommendation of the planning board and the various, the town engineer, the constituents in town that wanted to change the condition of approval to eliminate the sidewalk to nowhere that goes up the hill, and instead use those funds for the enhancement of the entrance gateway to Saco. And Emily reported on that eloquently at our last meeting, so I don't have anything to add to what she said at our first introductory meeting several weeks ago.
All right, thank you. Any questions from board members for the applicant? So with that, we have one remaining item to coordinate with staff from the code officer, that being the fall protection question we addressed while on site. That being any requirement that the code officer felt applied to this particular project. We observed some grades in there, some elevation change between the rear of the mail kiosk and the location of the new garage further up the site. So that's one item, and then we have the amendment to condition number 22. I guess beginning there, do board members have any questions, comments, or edits for that condition? Or any general questions about the application? Jeff?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have to say, when we're exiting our site walk, and I kind of looked at it, and I know it's oftentimes referred to as the sidewalk to nowhere, but I noticed a very distinct worn path where people are, I'm assuming, exiting, Main Street in Saco and going down the majority or the upper portion of that hill. And there's no defined crosswalk really to get them to the other side. So many times we look at some of our subdivision plans and or approvals, and we'll hear, well, there's no use there, let's waive that sidewalk. We had years with Jenkins Road issues with sidewalk. We had decades for Route 1 heading out to some of our attractions out on the Route 1 corridor. We've had the Industrial Park Road issues, and when we try to play catch-up with putting in this infrastructure, when city staff and construction has to kind of take over and fill it in, it's a long process. And quite honestly, I think that, there are better things that they can do with their time than construct a sidewalk that we, maybe as a board, we prematurely waived. And looking at this particular site, I know that it's definitely challenging. There is, a very steep grade there, but it's also a great opportunity. We're talking about this new gateway project. We're talking about new lighting. We could have an esplanade there. The applicant is obviously building a very stunning development. We all saw that with the attention to detail in the architecture and some of the surfaces there. I think that the occupants there, the inhabitants there, are going to want to be able to stroll up to grab a bite to eat in our Main Street. They're going to want to be able to continue down the Riverwalk. They're going to hopefully come to some of the stores on Main Street. With the enhanced lighting, an esplanade, everything could be moving at the right time versus us coming back in 5 years after this project is filled up and they realize that it is a higher demand. And it'd be too late. The lighting upgrades will be done. There's more infrastructure that needs to be moved. I just think this is an opportunity that was previously agreed to. It was a condition of approval and would be being built if we weren't talking about the new gateway project. And no guarantee that the gateway project is going to be 100% successful, and we may not need to revert back to a different traffic pattern there. Hopefully it would be. I just, as much as it might be nice to have some additional funding for the gateway project to be constructed, I think the gateway project as it is, in my opinion, can stand on its own merits and get the funding that it would need. And this side of this condition of approval, having the sidewalk, would be beneficial to many people. Just how ingrained that walkway, I don't know what some people call it, like a cattle path, but I mean, it's very defined that there are definitely people that are traversing that side of Main Street. And for whatever reason, I agree, if I was the property owner, where are they going? But the fact is they are going. And we're starting to see that now on the side of the Industrial Park Road, same sort of an effect. People are walking there in great enough numbers to knock down the vegetation. So my point, or my stance at this point, it was a condition of approval. It's already been approved. I would be in support of just maintaining that and not, transferring funds to the Gateway project at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Joyce?
I think the difference is not entirely the Gateway project, that it's also the fact that now the light is warranted. And previously, when this project was approved, there was a condition of approval for the sidewalk because it wouldn't be safe for the residents of this project to cross Main Street to get over to the sidewalk. Well, now there's going to be a signalized intersection with flashing lights, crosswalk, significant safety improvements, and perhaps a median in the middle. So, my recollection of the reason for the sidewalk was safety for these residents to get up to Main Street, to get up to a safe place to cross, and now they're going to have a safe place to cross right at their front door. So I'm thinking it's not necessary anymore. I'd rather see the money go into the improvements with the light and the crosswalk and get these people to the sidewalk that already exists.
Jeff?
Am I allowed to make a comment?
Yeah, but hold on one moment, please.
I understand and respect that. Just coming from an area of always thinking of all the possibilities, if the Gateway project is 100% successful and there were only one lane in each direction, that might, in my opinion, make some sense. The problem is the Gateway project is also very dependent on coordination of signalization from Saco into Biddeford. And every time you add the variable of pedestrian interface with signalized or coordinated signals, you add greater delay. And those delays will be amplified and spread out like ripples in a water. So we'll have the applicant's project in front of us on the Saco side. We'll have something at the top of the hill at the train station. We're going to definitely have, Biddeford has their 2 Main Street project. So yes, I would agree that that would be the concept of safer travel at a signalized intersection for the pedestrians, but it may not work once we coordinate all that together with this additional human interface of pedestrians trying to cross the road. And I also touch base a little bit too, is that there's the push for expanded use with cycle lanes on this hill. And they don't necessarily always follow the signalization. So my concern is somebody trying to be forced to cross at the applicant's crossway and getting hit by a cyclist coming down the hill, possibly not stopping, and they're only going to walk up the hill to hopefully come to the Saco side and dine or shop. So if we could just keep them on the side of the road that they were on to begin with, then they don't need to interface and delay traffic at all. I just view it as one additional variable. It's a very great attribute to have sidewalks on both sides of this intersection, because you can eliminate the interaction with people in the traffic signalization process. That's the big thing, right? We're seeing all this growth in Saco. We're seeing traffic signals go in, but how does that play out? New one at Jenkins Road right now, there's a fair amount of pedestrian interaction there, big delays. We finally got Industrial Park Road upgraded, right? Well, once the people start interacting with that signal, the right-hand traffic flow, there's special signs to tell you to stop, not everyone sees it. There is still increased hazard. Just because we have a pedestrian access point with the controlled intersection doesn't mean the risk is greatly minimized, in my opinion. So I just feel like having the sidewalk on both sides is very beneficial. We've seen benefits of it on Main Street. They're now doing it. Most of North Street has Saco sidewalks on both sides. So there are definitely some benefits to having sidewalks on both sides. And, I respect your view, and I just have a little different view of, not having as much faith in the technology, because I know how all those time delays are going to work and interact. And then now they're trying to communicate with 2 or 3 signals on either side, and these additional delays are not typically what the traffic engineers are necessarily focused on. They're trying to get volume through efficiently without queuing, and the pedestrian piece of it, yes, is to keep them safe, but it doesn't help the matrix for queuing at all. So those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Jim?
I think the applicant wanted to comment on this,
Um,
Mr. Chair.
There was a comment made, something that no one has said is that from our property downhill into Biddeford to the Riverwalk, there's no access. There's no way to get across the bridge. There's no sidewalk, there's no nothing. So the only way for people from Saco Riverside to go to Biddeford is to cross at the signalized coordinated light opposite our entrance and then choose to go left or right. Go right up the hill where there's already a sidewalk. If this was issue was, are we going to have a complete sidewalk on one side of the road and this would solve that problem, I could understand some of Jeff's concerns, but there's no sidewalk the other half of the way going down the hill, and there's no room to go across the bridge with a sidewalk. So you have to cross the street opposite Saco Riverside, and then you have an existing sidewalk that can take you up to the train station and Saco and downhill to Biddeford. And I think that's what I wasn't the initiator of this discussion. It was the Saco planning people, and they persuaded me that it made sense, and I think it does.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Jim.
Well, I was going to, it's interesting the applicant made those points. I was going to make a very similar point. I was not a fan of the light in Biddeford that's, with Water Hill and Main Street. I thought that would be a disaster, but I've been pleasantly surprised. I mean, it actually seems to control pedestrian access over to the sidewalk, over to the mills, or up the hill. In the same way that our light at the top of Main Street does. And while I think it may take a little bit of training for people in the area to get used to yet another crosswalk, I think having the sidewalk on one side of the hill, actually the side of the hill which there's the most of the people will be on, except for these 24 units. It seems to be a better use of funding to have that sidewalk money go into the Gateway project, and I'm very hopeful it's going to be successful, because I think it could actually ameliorate some of the concerns that you had, Jeff, about safety. I think it could actually make it much safer than people navigating a sidewalk on both sides of the road. So those are just my thoughts.
Thank you, Jim. Any other board member comments?
Mr. Chair, I think this is supposed to be for a public hearing tonight,
This is,
if I understand that correctly.
yes, this is a scheduled public hearing this evening.
So I'll move to open the public hearing, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for, in a motion.
I'll move to open the public hearing.
Thank you, sir.
I'll second that motion.
Motion made and seconded to open the public hearing for this evening. Any additional discussion? Those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0 to open the public hearing. If anyone is with us this evening to comment on this item, please come to the podium and state your name and address for the record. We start with 5 minutes to provide comments, and then move on from there if there is opportunity to speak again based on some of that discussion. So if anyone is here to discuss this item, please, again, step to the podium and state your name and address for the record.
Mr. Chair, can I ask a question about closing the public hearing? Because if we have an outstanding issue about the retaining walls, and we're going to get some feedback from codes regarding what those are going to look like and possible fencing requirements. I'm wondering if we should, rather than close the public hearing, table it just in case there are some new design elements that might merit feedback.
Sure, that's a good question, and I feel that's up to the board if we would like to continue the public hearing to another date pending comments from the code officer. We can provide a condition of approval that it's addressed or fall protection is provided if the code officer deems it necessary. Or, again, we can table and have discussion based upon the code officer's comments. I think that's up to the board. Do board members have any thoughts on that particular item?
Mr. Chair, it might depend upon how quickly the planner thinks she can get comments on the safety of those walls.
Yeah, I'll make sure to get them this week, and then maybe we put a July 29th meeting date on the list, so maybe we can get this back to you quickly.
Thank you, Emily.
Well, if that's the case, Mr. Chair, I'm thinking that's just a few weeks away. Even if we did close the public hearing, we would still have plenty of opportunity to review whatever the staff has to say and any other recommendations that they have to make to us. So maybe closing the public hearing would be all right. I mean, that's just my thought. I don't know.
So Jim, you're thinking that the public hearing is closed and further discussion on the application itself is continued to another meeting?
Right, that could be continued to the July 29th meeting. Then that would give us plenty of time to take into consideration anything the staff has to provide to us.
I think that makes sense. I mean, given the fact that we have 30 days after the close of the public hearing.
And given,
Well, we're back here in 2 weeks.
sure, given no comments provided
Right.
this evening, and no comments received by staff, I could support that.
In that case, I move to close the public hearing.
Well, second.
Thank you for the motion, Joyce, and the second, Jim. Any additional discussion on the motion to close the public hearing? Those in
So-
favor? Yes.
Mr. Chair, so if codes were to come back and say there is going to be fall restraint needed or rails of some sort, where you're saying that you feel you're comfortable there would be no additional public comment or concerns that we would want to listen to?
That's sort of up for discussion, sure.
I think if there were members of the public that came or that commented, we could always reopen the public hearing. But we're not, I mean, we have the plans in front of us right now, and we have no public comment.
I understand, but I think in fairness, I would be supportive just tabling or continuing to a later date. We can close it and vote in the same day anyways. It would be my preference. Thank you.
Any additional discussion? So motion right now is to close the public hearing. Those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
No.
Jeff?
No.
Jeff is very persuasive.
I'm going to vote yes. So the motion passes 3-2. So the public hearing is closed. So with that, we have we have our continued discussion regarding the sidewalk. So we've heard from Joyce and Jeff. We've heard from Jim. Carolyn, do you have any thoughts?
I agree with what both Jeff and, oh my gosh, I've agreed.
Joyce?
Thank you.
So you share both their concerns of, sort of see both sides of the coin here.
I do on both sides, but also the applicant's statement on there's really no, what am I trying to say? There's no,
The lack of access to
on one
Biddeford
side of the street, yeah.
on the bridge.
Yeah.
You're saying, sure. I myself, I see both sides as well. I see sidewalks on both sides of the streets being successful, being more opportunistic, but I guess I struggle with the sidewalk on that side of the street, given the gateway proposal by the city engineer, given the one access point for this project with, with the CMP property, with Brookstone, the hydro company. So I'm trying to gather the gain, I guess, of the sidewalk there. I guess I'm just not really 100% sold that we're gonna gain what we think we might from it. I'm worried about the lack of destination, and not to say that this one project is not important or we shouldn't have safe access to Main Street, of course, but is it necessary on that particular side of the street? I guess that's sort of where I'm coming from. Is that sidewalk? Is it necessary? Would it be good to have? If it were already there, if there were half of it, we could see continuing it. But that's sort of where I'm coming from. I guess aside from fees for this moment or whatnot, or contributing to the fund, but I'm just. Go ahead.
Thank you. I guess one last attempt to clarify my thoughts. I mean, obviously, we walked through, we saw these units. They're very nice units, very high-end units. They have provisions for kind of extended stay guests, if you're there. And I think in the type of season that we're in now, I see a lot of those occupants wanting to come to Saco. If you think about it, so anything on the easterly side of Main Street, if you wanted to go to one of the cafes, if you wanted to go to a church, if you wanted to go to the barber shop, if you wanted to go to Rapid Rays, if you want to go to SIA, anything that you would leave there, wouldn't it be much easier to leave, walk up the hill, and go to your destination only crossing Pepperell Square versus the increased hazard of crossing at a signalized intersection at the bottom of a hill, walking up the hill, crossing a higher volume entrance to the train station, continuing across the railroad tracks, and then having to cross at Water Street or Main Street, and then Pepperell Square. I mean, you're adding 3 to 4 crossings in there when you could have just turned and walked up the hill. And, I mean, what a beautiful location. I mean, the location, everything that is going to draw somebody to the applicant's development is enjoying the scenic vistas and what Saco has to offer. And why not let that be a functional asset of coming up the hill to anything that's on the easterly side of Main Street without having to do 2 additional crossings? Because at what point do you just hop into your air-conditioned car and drive into Saco and then deal with the parking problem, right? We're trying to make a walkable community. That is one of our mission statements in our comprehensive plan, is to promote walkability. And so to me, this is, you know, low-hanging fruit. It's already approved, it's there, and we're gonna waive it. Don't get me wrong, there's some viability in the other option. You're not really going anywhere, but this is going to be very, very nice dwelling units in our city. People that occupy them should be able to walk conveniently to patronize their existing businesses in our wonderful downtown. I just think it's a pretty simple opportunity to just enforce the condition as it was drafted, and those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
Through the chair, as much as what you said, I couldn't have said it better myself, because that is exactly what I was trying to say. Though Jeff is there, again, so persuasive, I have to agree. If our plan, which, you know, I'm new to the board, so I've only read so much of it, we are trying to make a walkable community. I do feel like, personally, if I'm going and staying somewhere, if I want to walk somewhere, I'll find a way if there's a crosswalk or not. But that's me. That's not to say that aesthetically having crosswalks, having sidewalks go on both sides of the street, it's aesthetically more inviting. It's, you know, when you have more crosswalks and a sidewalk on one side of the street, it does not welcome a walkable community. So it is hard because it's, you know, you can achieve both things on both sides of the story, but it's aesthetically having sidewalks on both sides is more welcoming. God, Jeff.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Thank you. Thank you, Carolyn. Yes, Emily, please.
I think it may be helpful just to go back to this plan, because the board members expressed a lot of interest and desire to see this plan forward at the March sketch workshop. I think we did a workshop with you, and Pat Fox came out.
Yes.
And at the time, we did explain, I know Pat explained that would require the Saco Island East developer to come forward and amend their plan to remove the sidewalk. And what we would do instead in that area would be having bike lanes on both sides. So there's also things in our comp plan, policies in our comp plan that call for not only walkability, but also bikeability. So this is the concept plan that we brought forward. This still requires your review, and these are all really good points, but I do want to just note that staff did offer this to the applicant to bring it forward. It's not a waiver of a condition, it's just a changing of a condition to pay a fee instead of constructing the sidewalk. We also recommended that the applicant bring forward a cost estimate for that so that it was not perceived as just getting out of a condition, because that's something that we brought forward with the applicant. So I just want to make sure that some of those items are clear. I'm not 100% sure that the sidewalk on this side of the street is going to look, what I mentioned at the site walk, is going to look exactly maybe like you would expect it to look, because there is a substantial amount of grading on that side of the hill that would need to be overcome. So we will wind up with a retaining wall and some other drainage considerations on that side of the street, which was another reason why staff thought it might look nicer to have like a landscaped area with sidewalks on both sides of the street. Bicycle lanes on both sides of the street, and bringing people over, pedestrians to cross safely through the signalized intersection. So these are all really good comments. I just thought I would kind of share some of the discussions that staff had and how we got to this concept plan. And we also would not have pursued discussions further with the developer had we known that there was a really strong desire back in March to have that sidewalk on this side of the street. We would have just directed the developer to continue forward with planning for their sidewalk and constructing their sidewalk. Again, it's totally up to the board. There's more information that you have taken through this review process. If the board decides that the sidewalk, that the original condition stands, there will need to be some time spent with the developer as far as when that sidewalk will be going in, because now we'll be a little bit out of timing for certificates of occupancy and when they're going to be ready as you saw, the structures are up. And so there was discussion with the applicant about this and bringing this forward right after we brought forward that concept plan to you in March. So just getting direction that that's the direction we received, that's the direction we went in. That's fine if it's not the direction the board wants anymore. We just need to kind of share that back with the applicant then, and then we would need to work with the applicant on the timing of when that sidewalk would actually get constructed.
Thank you,
So,
Emily.
thank you.
I mean, the board, when we reviewed that project originally, we felt very strongly about the sidewalk. That's why we see it there, and I think this concept plan is great. I think I understand the opportunity to make the adjustment. I guess I'm wondering, my question is does this concept plan not work if there's a sidewalk there? If the sidewalk were in place today, does that change this concept plan? And I guess I suspect, you know, the timing of this work, I guess the other part of my hesitation is the unknown. So maybe a little bit into Jeff's point, I wouldn't be in support of giving up a sidewalk on the other side for a potential of this gateway revitalization, and then it not come together, or funds don't get allocated in a manner that the board may expect or assume. So I guess, again, my hesitation is some of the unknowns with this. So I do agree that safe access for pedestrians, walkability, I couldn't agree more. Do we have any additional information on this concept plan, Emily, beyond this? Do we have any sort of traction or schedule, anticipated RFPs or anything, or how to, you know, this concept looks great now, but is it a 5-year plan? Is it a 10-year plan?
No, I believe it's within a few years. And what we are planning to do as staff, depending on the results of this decision by the planning board, we will be going forward with a discussion on the budget with the council. So there's TIF funds that could be allocated to this project. And so we will be bringing forward that as staff, but again, we were waiting for this decision. Because if the sidewalk is required, it changes what we're doing for the concept plan. And again, we can adjust. That's why you have an option to make a decision, right? But yeah, we are thinking of closer to 5-year timeline to answer your question.
Okay, thank you. And to continue discussion, I think, with the board here, as far as if the board wishes to continue with the direction of a sidewalk as it stands, you mentioned some timeframes and some certificate of occupancies. What are we thinking for a petition or a potential adjustment to any condition, or maybe an additional condition? And I guess in the sense of perhaps there's another opportunity, or as this concept plan develops, again, this is just a concept plan and first concept. It's pricing is going to get done, more engineering is going to get done. Everyone's going to learn a lot more about the viability of what we're seeing today. So I don't know if there's, I guess, an opportunity to I guess, revisit this as a whole at another time without tying up the applicant's
So we
time, I
are,
guess, on this amendment.
excuse me,
That's all.
we are designing the traffic signal with this concept plan in mind. So the whole traffic signal is being designed with this as a concept. We have, we've explained that the backup is, there needs to be room for the sidewalk connectivity, if that's where the board went. But this is what we've been using to move forward on that design as well.
So the roadway there doesn't, from curb cut to curb cut, is that, as part of this concept, does that change? Do you know that? Or, I mean, if this sidewalk, and I wish I was able to pull up the existing, or the current approved plan for the sidewalk. But does that, what's the relationship between the existing curb cut and the currently approved sidewalk plan? Does that curb cut remain?
So the sidewalk that you've reviewed is kind of like a two-dimensional sidewalk, so there's a lot more design and engineering that needs to go into like the final design of the sidewalk, including like a retaining wall and lighting, and so we don't have like a final end result, what it would be today. We do have concept plans, and there's been more engineering done on those concept plans to come to the cost estimate, but we don't have a final engineered drawing on it. Because the way it was approved with the condition was a concept plan showing the sidewalk.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Jim, yes.
I think, I certainly understand the interest in having a sidewalk on the, I'll call it the easterly side of Route 1 there. I think the problem with that thinking is that for these people in these 24 units, yes, they may want to walk up the hill to get to Main Street Saco, but it's just as likely that they'll want to somehow get across the street to be able to go into Biddeford. I mean, that they have, in the middle of August, they got some big festival down in their park down there near Water Street, and they hold lots of events there, and so that sidewalk crossing Main Street is critical, it seems to me, for this project to be successful. Otherwise, people can't walk into Biddeford, they can't come out of that development and take a left and walk across the bridge. They would take their life in their hands. There's no sidewalk there. So crossing Route 1 there with a signalized intersection that's the whole game here, I think. I admit, sure, would it be great to have a sidewalk that went all the way up the hill into Main Street Saco? It's like, sure, that's fine, but I think this intersection absolutely has to work for this development to be, for the people there to feel comfortable walking any place. So I think if enough design goes into this signalized intersection, and if this intersection is half as successful as the one in Biddeford, or the one at the top of the hill in Saco, I don't share Jeff's concern about safety. I think this will be a safer way to get people across, and if it's a trade-off of scarce resources to try to enhance walkability and bikeability, but if we have to give a little something up, and it's again, I'm not making fun of the sidewalk to nowhere, but I think that's something we should feel comfortable giving up so that we can get the benefit of these other these other gains in walkability. Now, I know, Mr. Chair, we have another meeting coming up on the 29th where we're going to hear this again. I don't know if we've actually moved to continue the application to that night, but
We have not yet.
but when you're ready, I'll be happy to make that motion. And I'm sure between now and then, we'll probably get more information from the staff about the gateway plan and how this this signalized intersection will work, and that may allay some of our concerns about, walkability.
Thank you, Jim. Jeff?
Mr. Chair, if I may, I just want to clarify, my understanding is that it's very clear it's not a one or the other. The signalization has met warrants, it's going in, and if I understood the city planner just moments ago, in their design that they're working on, they have incorporated or known that the sidewalk could be going in, because it was part of an approved condition prior to, so the mast arms are going to be of sufficient length. Everything is going to be there. The pedestrian crossing is going to be there, regardless if the sidewalk is there or not. So it's a matter of, do we offer, 70% of opportunity to be safe, or do we offer them, 90% of opportunity to be safe? Because now they have a choice to take the sidewalk or to have the crossing. The crossing for pedestrians is going to be there regardless of this decision. It's not a safety one-way or, oh no, there'll be no pedestrian signalization. It's going to be a signalized pedestrian crossing regardless. So I just, unless I don't want to put, misinterpret what the planner said, but it sounded like they were planning this intersection with spacing for the sidewalk to be there because it was an approved condition, mast arm-wise, so.
If I can, Mr. Chair.
Yes, please.
We've been planning it based on this concept plan. So we've been planning it with a bike lane to be installed. There's nothing that says that we couldn't alter plans. It hasn't gone in yet, but everything's been planned based on the concept plan with a Plan B, understanding this hadn't been approved yet.
So that Emily is without a sidewalk on that side.
It's per this concept plan, yeah. So, I mean, you could adjust some things on the design, the engineering design we can do it, because we know, what I said was Plan B would be the sidewalk is going in. But is being designed right now for what you see here, because we heard very positive, strong feedback from the board.
Any other additional thoughts or concerns from board members?
Mr. Chair, could we tackle each, there are 4 bullet items that they're asking for amendment. Can we tackle, we want to hold off, I think, on the retaining walls for code enforcement's report. But we could discuss the units 11 through 14 on their architectural revisions. We could discuss the construction of the garage.
Yeah, if board members are ready to discuss those, absolutely. So yeah, so let's begin. I guess retaining walls. Let's start there. We're gonna find a staff memo from code enforcement officer regarding that item, whether fall protection is required. I guess I feel we still, a few of us felt that it was definitely still a question to understand, and how we mitigate that concern, I guess. So I guess beyond that, are there any other thoughts or concerns or from board members? All right.
Do we move to table that item to a future date pending the code enforcement report, and then we can discuss our options from there?
Why don't we go through all of them and see where we fall on all of them, and then we can maybe do one all-encompassing motion. So units 11 through 14 and 21 through 24, those are updates to the site plan to match architectural revisions. I don't believe anyone had any concerns with those items as well. No. And then the garage with the gravel access. I think it's on the applicant, and at their risk, given the lease between the adjacent landowner. I personally don't understand the gravel access component to it, the garage. I understand that's a request and amenity for this community here and potential buyers. I just don't in all the elaborate design and accoutrements that we have in here, to have a gravel section at the end of your road in this new development to get to a garage, doesn't quite make sense to me.
I think it's because the gravel section is on the easement property. I believe that's the issue, is that the applicant's not going to install pavement on property that he doesn't own.
I know. That, I know. It's still strange to me. To lease the land, put a garage on yours, and to give your buyers in the community, here's a garage, and you gotta go across the gravel apron to get to it. It's a little bit backwards in my opinion. I think the garage location is suitable. I don't think I have any concerns with it. We reviewed the architecture. I'm in support of that amendment. Less the gravel portion. That's still odd to me. Jeff, you have thoughts?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I echo the gravel concerns. It does seem a little odd. I'm more, is there anything that we could do as far as like documentation, so that any purchasers very clearly understand when they buy their deed that this is under a lease, and in 27 years it could be denied access to your garage? That's just the one. I think it'd be important, if we're going to allow something that does seem odd, is to have to drive across leased property, and then if you buy this as a second owner, and in 4 years they say, oh, by the way, the lease is up and we're putting solar panels there instead, you can't access the garage you bought. They might go to the city and say, hey, how come you let something like this go through? Is there a legal term you guys use, some sort of a deed attachment notification when you buy the property? Hey, by the way, the lease expires and you could lose access to this property that you're going to own.
So you're talking about more than just a note on the plan, assuming that people don't actually
Yes.
look at their plans.
Correct. And that's
A
where
note on the deed.
something on the deed, so that when the next title takes place, that their attorneys might tell them, hey, by the way, do you realize that there's this little bit of oddity, because somebody may pave that in 5 years, and then 20-something years later, then they say, oh, by the way, we're cutting it out and we're taking our land, we're not renewing your lease. That's the bigger oddity to me, is that it looks like everything looks so nice there, and it looks like it would just flow, and I think in a few years people would be very troubled if they realized that they lost access to something they bought.
Sure.
Excuse me, through the chair.
Caroline,
I'm just curious, and I could be wrong, but notification of owners and purchasers, is that our purview to make sure that somebody's notified of something we might find odd, that they know of it?
Yeah, not typically. That is sort of the buyer beware and due diligence portion of purchasing properties. So Jeff's concern, and I share it as well, but Emily, as far as the condominium declarations, those will need to be amended as well to address the garage in some fashion, and thus accessing it, right? So that should address your concern, Jeff, mine as well, and sort of Carolyn as how your question as well. So I'm not quite sure how that verbiage comes together, Emily, so we should either get that document amended as part of this, or draft an appropriate condition. Probably easier if it gets amended in the condo declarations. And then my other thought, Emily, do you know this access drive, is it built to city standards as well, and potential city acceptance in the future? Is that, unfortunately, I don't recall on this project if that's an option or viable.
Everything here will remain private. So there will be no option to bring this forward to city standards. It's not built to a city spec for a subdivision of like a public street review.
Okay, all right. That was my understanding as well. I thought so. Okay.
And Mr. Chair, I would admit, I'm not quite sure how these three bays in the garage are supposed to work, or who's going to use them under what circumstances, but let's imagine that maybe the condo association's going to own the garage and they'll let people use it. But if each person, or if there are going to be three people because each unit's going to have its own garage, right? Every unit there is going to have their own garage. So this would be for someone who wants like additional garage space. And if they're going to lease the space for a particular amount of time, I imagine the condo association is going to be in control of that. And if the lease runs out with CMP, then no one gets to use the garage, and that'll be pretty obvious to the condo owners. If they're going to sell each space in the garage, I imagine whoever's doing the title work on that purchase would certainly tell the buyer that, by the way, you may only be able to access this for 27 years. So I don't think we should really be concerned with that. I think that's going to work itself out. And I understand the gravel access, but I can certainly also appreciate the applicant not wanting to pave over a right-of-way on someone else's property. I mean, that's pretty bold, and CMP probably wouldn't allow that anyway. So I guess I'm not as concerned with the garage or the gravel access.
Thank you, Jim. Yes, please.
In my previous life, before I was a developer, I was trained as a lawyer with Justice Roberts and Mitt Romney and some other people from down the street. And the way to avoid lawsuits is disclosure. So if someone's going to rent or buy a garage, someone's going to tell them, their attorney is going to tell them, you don't have, this is not condominium land, you don't have unlimited access. There's a term. If you have a 5-year lease, you can do it for 5 years. If you have a 27-year lease, you're good for 27 years. But to me, the question for the planning board is the garage a nice addition to the project or not? If it is, it's my job to worry about how I warn people or inform them what their rights might be 5 or 10 or 27 years in the future.
Yep, thank you. Yeah, I agree. It is the board's, it's under our purview to review the garage. For discussion, I think we like to understand and learn as well. So I guess with that, we have the garage. We've talked about access to it. So I guess beyond that, I think the garage is fine as part of this amendment. So moving on, the mail kiosk and irrigation system structures. Any thoughts or concerns from board members on that item?
I think it's a nice addition, actually, the mail kiosk. It helps create an obvious entryway to the project.
Yes, thank you, Joyce. I agree. I don't see any concerns with that building or structure there. I think it's a nice addition. One item, Emily, that I'm seeing in my notes here is we talked about, in addition to the retaining walls, there was a few dry stack walls near the entrance there, and I guess we were gonna just verify, and perhaps you can do at the staff level with the applicant, that whether those need to appear appropriately on the site plan or not as part of any revisions or as-built drawings. But any other thoughts from board members on any of these items? Again, we spoke about the sidewalk at length, so as far as this item, we've opened the public hearing, we've closed the public hearing, and there's one remaining item regarding the retaining walls that we'd like staff input on. And I guess additionally with the sidewalk, perhaps if the board wishes or not, Emily, is it possible to get an update from Public Works Director Fox as the status of any of that for greater understanding for the board on where that item stands and any adjustments or amendments to that concept plan, or just generally speaking?
Yes, we'll see if he can give us a written memo with updates.
Okay, thank you. Any other thoughts from board members, I guess, on any of those items? Jeff?
So are we going to kind of evaluate them each on their own merit, or are we trying to do the whole site plan amendment in one swoop?
Well, I guess I would like to address the site amendment here as one complete package. If the board would like, we can continue the hearing to the July 29th meeting, if that fits the agenda and the scope of that evening. Looking for additional information on the sidewalk and the intersection improvements and the retaining wall, and then address it all together. But I think we could, I think, Emily, maybe you would confirm or agree that we really would, the amendments brought to us are one package. We wouldn't want to, and I don't know if you're suggesting that we approve one at a time or individually and come back, but are you just thinking more of like a straw poll sort of discussion, or?
Well, I mean, I think we've discussed it. I think we all have our very strong rooted feelings on them, but I would hate to have one item pull the whole decision for what the applicant's trying to achieve.
Sure.
And that's kind of why I thought we might address, you know, each one separately, and that way he'll end up with a site plan that he might get some of the things he desired and maybe not others. Just as if code comes back and gives us a very different interpretation of what we're thinking, you know, just, I think it'd be beneficial to approve each one individually is my thought, but that's, I'll leave that up to the rest of the board.
Okay, I'm following. You would like to do that this evening, or you would like to, you're generally speaking, waiting for all the information to come in and then make a decision, or?
I think you brought up some very good points with, you know, I have this information from code office that I'm kind of leaning towards. You would like to have some more from the Director of Public Works, so it might be best if we just table the whole item until the next meeting when we have all that additional information, and then we can summarize and close out this application.
Okay. Any other thoughts from board members on that direction? I'm in support of it as well. I understand your thought on addressing each item individually, so we can provide clear direction, and then if an adjustment needs to be made, or we need to modify any conditions of approval based on how the board feels on some of these items, we can work with Emily to do that. Does that make sense, Emily?
I just want to make sure I give you what you are looking for. So what I was thinking is drafting one set of findings of fact for you and conditions of approval that you can amend as you see fit.
Yes.
I was not planning on drafting one set for each amendment bullet on here. To me, this is one application.
Yeah, and I think we can address those findings and conditions based on these items when we address them.
Okay,
As necessary.
thank you.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chair, then I'll move to continue this application for further review on July 29th.
I'll second.
Thank you for the motion, Jim. And the second, Joyce. Any additional discussion on the motion to continue this item to July 29th, pending staff input on the sidewalk and retaining walls? Those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
A vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0 to continue.
Mr. Chair, can we take a short break, please?
Yes.
Before the next agenda item?
Yes. Emily, is that everything for this item here, Saco Island East?
Yes, thank you.
All right. Thank you. Yes, we will take a 5-minute recess. All right, thank you, everyone. We will continue our agenda this evening. Our next item is 73 Industrial Park Road. This is map 71, lot 1. This is a light industrial warehouse flex space. The owner is Saco Flex LLC, presented by DM Roma. And this is a continued application review and a public hearing. And it is a site plan proposal for the construction of a 29,670 square foot light industrial warehouse space, 13 units and associated site improvements in the industrial zoning district. This item is also an item that we had a site walk this evening on prior to this meeting. There were all the board members you see with us this evening attended that, along with staff member and planner Emily, along with the applicant and the owner. Do you have anything else to add, Emily, on this item?
I do have plans the applicant has asked me to pull up, so I'll do that in just a minute. We did go over like sewer questions at the site walk, so it might be worth just kind of doing a debrief of the site walk and then reiterating some of the things we went over. One of those things also mentioned was the Army Corps permitting that the applicant is working through. So I'll bring up what the applicant sent me to share on the screen. Thank you.
Great, thank you. The applicant is with us as well. Would you like to give a brief rundown of our site walk? We talked about some of the wetland areas. We observed some of the vegetation along the abutting property. We talked about some sewer issues with a few of the structures, or maybe one structure in particularly, that seems to have had some issues in the past and seems to be resolved at the moment, but we discussed anything.
Actually, yeah, I think that kind of summarizes the site walk itself. I know that we did talk with the gentleman from Yale Cordage and kind of talked through their issues they've had in the past with their sewer service. There has been some remediation work with the sewer structure that they tie into. It doesn't seem like they're having the issues that they used to have historically with their adjustments to the sewer system. So hopefully that'll address that concern. We did talk with, we met out in the field with Howard Carter with the Water Recovery or Water Resources Recovery Department, along with the Public Works, the city engineer, sorry, and kind of went over what we saw looking down into the manhole, and it looked like it was working fine. So hopefully that is something that we can get around. And then we walked down the access road next door and took a look at the screening that was available from Industrial Park Road to where the first building was going to go, and it appeared that there was going to be adequate to provide the screening as long as everything's left in place, which it's planning to be. Trying to think of anything else that jumped out. We are in the process of permitting with the Army Corps of Engineers related to the wetland impacts. They're all part of the stormwater infrastructure that's just needs to be maintained, but because it's been connected to an existing forested wetland, the Army Corps has taken jurisdiction over the wetlands, and so we're in the process of permitting, going through that right now. Other than that, during the site walk, I think that's kind of what we went over. If there's anything else I missed, please let me know.
All right, great, thank you. I think maybe just to run back to the sewer for a moment, the structure that this project is tying into is not the same structure that appeared to be having some problems and had some remediation performed.
Correct.
Correct? Okay. Any other questions from board members at this time for the applicant or staff?
I
Joyce?
suppose one One other thing that we talked about at the beginning of the site walk that some of the planning board members might have missed was the changes in configuration and grade of the parking lot.
Yep, so currently there's a loading dock that goes up to the existing building. So there's a 4-foot drop in elevation so that a box truck can pull into the loading bay. That is going to be removed, so that area is going to be filled, the pavement's going to be removed, filled in, and it's just going to be a nat-grade garage, and that's actually going to help with providing the elevation difference that we needed to provide the wetland crossing below the driveway entrance. So that all kind of worked out in the end.
Thank you. Any other thoughts or questions from board members? So this application before us this evening, again, is for a site plan review.
Actually, Matt,
Yes.
I apologize.
Go ahead.
One of the items that was not included in our most recent responses to comments was what we want to do is be able to phase this project. The way we want to phase it is to pretty much do all the groundwork, do the utilities, stormwater, pavement, things of that nature for the entire development, and build building 2, the one that we saw in the field today, the longer one, and then build the slab for building 1, but then hold off on actually erecting building 1 until it's typically it's about financing, really. The way everything's being financed, it's just going to be a little bit easier for them to go about that way. It won't be any more than 2 years, so it won't be this long, drawn-out, who knows what's going to happen in the future kind of thing. But it will be, we're looking at phasing it, which will phase the performance guarantee as part of what we're also trying to accomplish.
Okay, thank you.
So again, I know it wasn't in your original packet, and we can discuss it tonight, but I did talk with Emily a little bit about that, and we'll, before the next meeting, we'll provide an updated site plan which shows the phase line.
Okay. That was exactly what I was going to say. If we could maybe show something graphically on the plan to talk about that, I think that would be a good start. All right, any additional?
Emily, did you not get that one? That is sent today. Oh, there it is. So
There we go.
pretty much everything in red, or the boundary in red, is really the limits of phase 2. So what we'll do is obviously update the site plan not in red and get that to you.
Sure. Any other questions from board members at this time? In our packet, we have we have a memo from you, Jason, that addresses some of the city engineer comments. As far as the landscaping peer review, did you have a chance to review that memo, and did you have any comments on that yet, or is that?
There was a follow-up memo?
Well, I guess I have a landscape, from our landscape peer reviewer from June 5.
Yes. So in June, when I responded to comments before the June meeting, I did address her comments.
Okay. So I'm a little out of
You
order
you
here.
surprised me there. I was thinking that I missed a memo here.
So, Mr. Chair,
Yes, Emily.
staff will make sure that the comments are reviewed by the landscape peer reviewer for the next meeting. And
Okay.
you'll have like a follow-up memo.
Okay, all right, thank you. I thought we had addressed it, but I didn't see that other piece in here. Jeff?
Not seeing any comments at this point. I know it's advertised as a public hearing, so, Mr. Chair, I move to open the public hearing for 73 Industrial Park Road site plan review.
Thank you, Jeff, for the motion.
I'll second.
Second by Carrie Lynn, thank you. Any additional discussion? Those in favor of opening the public hearing? Jim?
Yeah, yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0 to open the public hearing. If anyone is here this evening to discuss this item, please step to the podium. We allow 5 minutes for our first round of comments, and if the opportunity arises for a second round, we limit those to 3. But if anyone is here would like to speak, please, again, come to the podium and state your name and address for the record.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
seeing that no members of the public wish to come forward, I move to close the public hearing.
Thank you for the motion, Jeff.
Second.
Second by Joyce, thank you. Any additional discussion? Jim?
Mr. Chair, I'm just wondering, is there any information we are waiting for from city staff or responses from the applicant that we haven't, that would cause us to continue the public hearing rather than close it? Emily?
So the items, Mr. Chair, if I may?
Yes, please.
The items that we're waiting for are really the city engineer's final review of the comments that we received, as well as the landscaping peer review's final review of the plans with the comments. And then we're also waiting for like the Army Corps items.
Those don't sound like anything that would cause us to keep the public hearing open, though.
I think that's, yeah,
Right.
it's up for our discretion, I suppose.
Okay.
Yep. Any additional discussion? Those in favor of closing the public hearing? Jim?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0 to close the public hearing. Comments, questions, concerns from board members? I think we had a pretty successful site walk here this afternoon. I think we answered some good questions, learned some good things. Understanding those wetlands, I think that was good. That was worth being out there and observing those, along with sort of the visual screening and impact from Industrial Park Road. We talked about the architecture a little bit, and then we have the landscaping, before us, and the landscape architect, again, waiting for their review. But it was good to understand a lot of those items here. So, Jeff?
Mr. Chair, I agree. I kind of wanted to comment on, I don't perceive any issues with allowing phasing. They'll have all their impervious area basically in play with the concrete, and all their storm management will be in place. So whether it be a steel building sitting there or whether it be a concrete slab, I don't think that is as much concern from my point of view. I did like the site walk. I thought it was very helpful, understanding the buffering a little bit. I can ask one question with like the rear entrances. Are they required to have any egress doors, like for emergency egress, that would be going out to the neighboring access drive? Like, it's technically the back of the building. We talked about a little design feature. Are there any personnel doors that'll be required for emergency egress?
There are not as of now.
So we're not worried about dumping any occupants out into, a wooded area or a buffer
That is
area?
correct, yeah,
Okay.
the distance exits are all sufficient.
So I'm also hoping, maybe like I said, there could be a little bit of conversation, possibly, if there could be some connectivity, understanding that you do meet all the turning movements on site. I think it's a great opportunity for our city, knowing that, you know, we lost a lot of incubator space when the mills were built up. A lot of companies had started there. Those are no longer viable for our industrial base here in the area, and I know we don't have as much as we used to, but having small facilities like this for companies is very important, and I'm very glad that you're offering that in our community. I'm assuming you have kind of a target market. Would you ever have any industries or markets you would not be renting to? I mean, like excluding dispensaries, care growers, that sort of stuff. Is that all on the table for you guys once you build the space out? Or are you really trying to market to, you know, a small machine shop, a small or medium-sized, you know, plumbing outfit?
Yeah, those are more in line with what our targets are intending to be. There are also some people that buy them for toy storage. You've seen that as well. That's not necessarily a target demographic, but it is a use that works for us. So that's the intention, is generally contractors, fabrication shops, small stuff like that.
You said purchase, so maybe I missed that. So it's going to be like a condominium association, and they'll each be purchased and owned individually? Okay. Yeah, so, and I thought from the site walk, I know I brought up concerns about the visibility from the road and from board members. I didn't feel like that was much of an issue. I think they've done some kind of unique stuff with some of the siding colors, just to give it a little visual break. And like I said, I don't tend to, I know it's in our ordinance, but it's also our industrial park, right? And we're try to give it a little visual clarity, maybe a little color, without having to have a whole bunch of design features on these back walls that can sometimes create security risks, whether, you know, if it's a window. So I felt like the site walk was very helpful with that. Like I said, I think it's a great opportunity for our commercial and industrial space to have these smaller incubator, if you will, facilities, opportunity for a good business storefront. So I was happy with the progress, and like I said, I wouldn't have issues with allowing phasing as a condition of approval. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Jeff. Any other thoughts from board members? I agree with Jeff. The phasing of this is not a concern of mine. Just as you put, Jeff, building out all the impervious area, all the structure, all the site improvements would be complete. That's the bulk of, you know, the site work there. So I don't see any problems either. Yeah, I don't think I have anything else to add.
Mr. Chair, would it then be appropriate to simply continue this to the next, our next meeting date, July 29th, for findings of fact, conclusions, and complete our task then?
Sure. So I believe our next steps would be to see draft findings of fact and conditions of approval. I think given the Army Corps component of this, we may want to move it to the next available meeting date that works for the applicant and for our agendas as well. Does that work, Emily? We don't have a specific date at this time, do we?
Yeah, so I have this tentatively scheduled for August 13, but if you want to say next available date, that's fine.
I think next available is fine. It gives us a little bit of flexibility. I don't think there are any major items here. So if the 13th works and we can address Army Corps at that time, that status, if it's not complete.
Well, Mr. Chair, then I'll move to continue this application review for 73 Industrial Park Road to July 29th.
29th or next available?
Oh, I'm sorry, I may have misunderstood.
Sorry, I don't think the 29th is available. I think that's,
Oh, is that, okay, then August 13th, I'm sorry.
okay.
All right? August 13th.
Does that date work, Emily?
Yes, that's fine,
Okay.
as long as it works for the applicant.
All right,
No problem.
thank you. So motion to continue this application to August 13th.
Second.
Second by Joyce, thank you. Jeff?
Just one more thing, maybe a question for the applicant that we can carry on to our discussion on August 13th, where it's a condominium association, and the current zoning does allow for contractor or tradesperson or light industrial. If it's a condominium association, are you going to have, or have you considered having anything in your condo docs that would really limit the outside storage, where we normally start to worrying about different level of screening? So as you know, offices of contractors and tradespeople versus regular office, it's usually about the outside storage
Right.
element and then how we screen it. And I think, for me, I kind of missed that, and I apologize in my detailed review, but when I was looking at the perimeter and the outside, just, you know, we have multiple units, and you might have one person that's very, very kind of messy and cluttery outside. Is there anything that you might be offering up in your documents? It doesn't necessarily have to be answered tonight, but that'd be something I'd like to discuss further in the review.
Yeah, I can, we're not gonna permit outdoor storage at all.
Thank you, Jeff. Any additional discussion? Those in favor of continuing this application to August 13th? Jim?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Does that capture everything on that item, Emily?
Yes, thank you.
All right, continuing on, our next item on the agenda this evening is 969 Portland Road, map 63, lots 9, 10, and 13. This is for a trailer sales and service facility presented by Saco Technics. And this is a continued application review and public hearing for a site plan review of a proposed 45,000 square foot sales and service facility for Hale Trailer Brake and Wheel with a 17-acre trailer parking facility, or parking lot, excuse me, in the Portland Road zoning district. Do you have anything to add to this, Emily?
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chair. I have couple of items here. The first is in your after-the-fact meeting packet. We did receive a landscape peer review from Regina Leonard, dated July 11th. I have also sent that to the applicant, but just about an hour before this meeting, so they literally just saw that as well. But you have that we'll ask the applicant to follow up on. Some of the questions from the site walk, just noted here from your July 2nd notes. Impervious surface was a big question, and the board had asked for additional information about either a market analysis or anticipated business operations. There was a question about whether the applicant could use parking held in reserve. There were a list of potential items and questions about storage within the trailers and containers, and then a question about organizational schematic about how the trailers would be stored throughout the site. So we did receive a memo outlining responses. I encourage you to look at that and tell the applicant whether that meets what you were looking for. There is a substantial amount of area that will be developed with mature trees, so we did send this to the Conservation Commission. Their review is in the meeting packet. They highlighted a couple of things, so I also encourage you to look at that and consider their comments. They did the same site walk, that they were invited to the site walk and participated, and then they heard from the applicant at a meeting a couple days later, I believe. We are just looking to see if there's remaining comments and and peer reviews and coordinating those back with the applicant. So that's kind of where we are at this point. And then we also have a note here from the last meeting about just design standard considerations. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Any questions from board members to Emily? All right, with that, we have the applicant. If you want to give us another update or
Sure.
any revisions?
Yeah, thank you. Good evening. My name is Matthew Orr, civil engineer with Saco Technics, and here with me tonight is the applicant and end user, Scott McBride, director of facilities for Hale Trailer. So I think you've seen this a couple times, but the rendering of the overall site. Since the last submission, I believe it made it in with our materials, but we did have some architectural changes to the building, so the facade and the actual components do change a little bit, not a ton in material type, it's more in the roof line and how those architecturally would appear from Portland Road, as well as a little bit smaller footprint to the front building. So the position is the same as we showed during the site walk. The rear line, so the furthest point from Portland Road. And then going to, so previously we didn't really have, you know, kind of the peaked roof style over this would be the office facility where my cursor is. So this would be your view from Portland Road here. Something that was also discussed at the last meeting was bringing some visualizations to see what the facility will look like in the built-out conditions from Portland Road looking at the site. So we did prepare a few of those as well, which included the landscaping. That landscaping, just as a note, is about, I believe it's in the 5 to 10 year growth range. So obviously, again, as mentioned previously, when plantings are first installed during construction, they might not be as full as what is pictured here. So this would be if you were standing on the sidewalk that is in front of the Aquaboggin site and looking across Portland Road. And then a couple different angles. So this is your exit-only drive and what you would see from that angle, and incorporating on the left side of the image kind of that tree save area that we discussed and looked at while on the site walk. So again, you'd see the facility, but you really from this angle aren't going to be able to see a lot of that storage area towards the rear of the site. And then this image is more from the entrance drive. There is a little bit of visualization that you would see some storage area in the back of the site. There is an opportunity to put more plantings there, but I would just state that we also have a lot of these areas indicated for snow storage, so it's balancing the amount of plantings and also snow storage that's available on site for the facility. With this as well, I mean, this would be what you would see if you were standing on the sidewalk and looking at the facility. Being that this is a high trafficked area, cars in this area, the speed limit's 45 miles an hour, so, and especially traveling in the northbound direction, you really are not going to have a lot of opportunity coming in that direction to see into the facility and see the storage towards the rear of the site. And then this is more of a aerial view kind of depicting with a little bit of a layout on how those trailers and all might be stored in the back. Again, not necessarily the final layout of how that will look, but just to give a feel and size and representation with a mix of pedestrian vehicles as well as trucks entering and exiting the facility. And then lastly, the floor plan. So with the updated building layout, there was a discussion, which was previously mentioned, that we have gone forward to add 2 wet bays within the maintenance shop area. So these will be primarily just for hosing down of trailers. They're not true truck washes, so it's not like a car wash with, you know, under sprays and all of those jets. And the applicant can speak more to that as far as their function and use, but we do anticipate it would be, you know, like a once-a-day use, not frequent high turnover of volume on trailers and water usage. And with that, I believe everything else has been captured in memos to this point. I'm happy to answer any other questions that the board may have.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant by board members at this time?
Mr. Chair, I guess there's just one. I know we talked about the possibility of phased build-out of the parking area for the trailer storage.
Yes.
And I believe there was a memo or a response, perhaps from Sebago Technics, that indicated that that's not a good option for the applicant, right? Because of the storage, the shortage of storage that you already have in Portland that you're trying to alleviate here in Saco. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, due to the nature of moving to this site and what is looking to be achieved, it's just, at this time, it's more, for one, financially feasible, and also just the demand of what they need for area to do a complete build-out. We did discuss and bring up the parking and reserve item that was mentioned with the board on the site walk, and at this time, it just does not fit in with the applicants, with what's being proposed on this facility.
Thank you, Jim. Jeff?
So, Mr. Chair, thank you. I want to thank you very much. Those perspective views from the front, I think, were very helpful for me. I really commend your design as far, I like the green space in the front. I know that oftentimes, a lot of times they're trying to push that, minimize the front setback. I think it makes it look very professional, and it provides a nice buffer, particularly given the size of the equipment that your client's dealing with. The addition of the wash bays, that means that you're doing additional work with the water recovery resources as far as the floor drains and any holding and treatment equipment, correct? They'll be bringing back?
Correct, yeah, that information will be resubmitted to water recovery. Thank you, Jeff, I didn't mention that. For the inclusion of an oil water separator on site, which previously we didn't have, obviously, yes.
Which kind of brings me back to another topic a little bit of, if you're washing these out, is there any sort of special area that, you know, the possibly contaminated trucks that might be in for service will be parked to try to mitigate any runoff from them? Or, I know I kind of asked about it a couple times and I haven't really heard back, because we've heard, you know, a lot of board concern about the impervious area. We've heard Preservation Commission about the same thing, trying to do phased approach. But also, is there going to be like kind of a designated area that, you know, like I said, possible, you know, contaminated or vehicles could be parked as far as runoff from within or out of the vehicles, the trailers?
At this time, I don't believe so. I know, Scott, if there's anything you have to add to that specifically.
What type of contamination would you, like, I'm trying to understand the question.
So if you had a trailer that was hauling, you know, municipal sludge cake or petroleum contaminated soils, and it had to come in and it was an open body dump type trailer. If it was parked in your lot for 2 weeks and there's a heavy rainstorm, there's obviously some runoff from that. That just as if you work on tank vehicles, you're doing something on brake vehicles, that, you know, a placarded vehicle that might not have been washed out and is stored on site, do we have to worry about any setbacks for buffers? Maybe not so much runoff, but neighboring properties that could have, you know, 6 placarded trailers that are sitting there waiting, that still have, you know, petroleum residue in them, or
I understand.
that sort of question.
As far as any sort of tank trailer or hazardous material trailer, those are always unloaded and cleaned before they come onto our property. We require all of our customers to go, if it's a tank, it has to go through a tank wash before we will take it to work on it, to do anything with it. As far as like a refuse trailer, we ask all of our customers to wash those out before they come into our property as well. So there's not really, really the only sort of contamination you might run into is just road salt, stuff that sticks to any vehicle when it comes on the property. So everything is pretty much empty when it comes onto our properties.
So at the wash bays, in anticipation of vehicles that come in, pre-washing them before they're put in a hold pattern before they're repaired, or is that just like for detailing newer equipment before it rolls out?
It's primarily for newer equipment when it comes to us. For instance, we have a manufacturer in Canada. When those trailers come to us in the winter, they are just disgusting. So we have to wash them. And it doesn't really, having a guy outside in December with a pressure washer those guys don't stay on the payroll long. So having a heated inside area to do that is really kind of a necessity.
The only other thing that I noticed was between the landscape architect review and the Conservation Commission, the mapping of the trees. And I guess we'll, as a board, we'll have to talk about that. I didn't really see a lot in the site walk that I felt like was of significant concern, but I guess I don't know how we look at. I guess I just a little bit puzzled. What would we do? You know, block out a piece of their retail area to preserve a tree that I didn't think was, you know, that 24-inch at breast height. You know, I don't know if it needs to be mapped. I guess we should talk about that as a board. So
Yeah, I agree. Thank you, Jeff. Any other thoughts from board members right now for the applicant?
Mr. Chair, may I ask a point of clarification?
Yes.
Were these plans submitted with the wash bay details? I think maybe it's through the chair for Matt. Like, do we have any of the wash bay details?
No, not on the site plans, no.
Okay, because it's a little disappointing to have it in front of the board without, I know you called me and told me there was interest in doing this, but it's pretty disappointing to have it like in front of the board without comments from Water Resource Recovery, if they'll even allow for a wash bay with some of the runoff from the cleaning of the trailers. So we usually just vet that internally with staff before we'd bring something like that to the board. I know you're going to go back to the department, but it's a little concerning that it's changed that much and you're just presenting it to the board this night. But that's just, thank you for listening.
Thank you for noting that, Emily. Any other thoughts from board members? So, let me just get my bearings here for just a moment. So, Emily, we still have, this evening is a public hearing as well. Is that correct? We haven't addressed that item.
Yes.
Okay. Just for note for the board right now. Yeah, if the board would like to start discussion or address the public hearing first?
Yeah,
It's up to the board.
Mr. Chair, I move to open the public hearing.
I'll second.
Thank you for the motion and the second. Any discussion? Those in favor of opening the public hearing, Jim?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0 to open the public hearing. If anyone is here this evening to speak on this matter, please step to the podium and address or provide your name and address for the record.
Mr. Chair, seeing no members of the public choosing to speak, I move to continue the public hearing and review to a later date pending staff review of the recently added wash bay and water recovery system.
I'll second.
Thank you for the motion, Jeff, and the second, Carrie Lynn. Any additional discussion on the motion to continue the public hearing?
Mr. Chair, should we have a specific date, or if we're uncertain how long it'll take to have the wash bays, more information provided to the city staff, and city staff then providing information to us? Is August 13th too soon, or right now the motion is just to continue to the next available date, right?
No, I specifically chose it to be open-ended so that wastewater recovery, the city engineer can weigh in and then possibly talk with the applicant as to exactly what type of washing. There could be several types of discussions, I believe, that could take place. And once they give us their review, then we could continue. So if it's 3 weeks or 5 weeks or a week, at least we can bring it up and give all the parties involved time to do sufficient review before it returns back to us.
Well,
Yeah,
Jeff,
so-
you've convinced me again, so I agree.
So I agree with Jeff, but I think in the past, I think for scheduling purposes, if we provide a date, and if that date needs to be tabled to another date, or if, as far as getting that information, does that help staff along, or how does that work with notifications, and does that help make the process more clear to everyone?
So the rule of thumb is if you publicly notify someone of the continued date and they didn't make the hearing, then they've received notice through this meeting. So if you make the meeting date August 13th, and if we don't get the materials, we'll report that we don't have the materials, and the matter will either be continued again or tabled.
Okay. So,
Mr. Chair, I move to amend my motion to continue to the date of August 13th.
thank you for the amendment to your motion.
I think Carrie Lynn
I
seconded.
did. I will amend my second to exactly what Jeff just said.
Thank you for your second amendment, Carrie Lynn. And that date for discussion, Emily, is sufficient? Okay. So any additional discussion on the motion to continue public hearing to August 13th? Those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0 to continue the public hearing to August 13th. Conservation Commission comments and landscaping comments. Any questions, concerns from board members?
Well, I think the applicant addressed the issue of phasing pretty thoroughly.
Sure.
I think they answered that question and provided justification for it.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, we were all on the site walk, and we we might have different criteria than the Conservation Commission. I know one of the members was taking pictures. And some of the trees were certainly large, but a lot of the large trees didn't look terribly healthy.
Any other? No, that I had the same observation. There's quite a mix in there. It seemed like a lot of old growth. I guess I'm focusing a little bit at the moment on the percentage of landscape requirement in our ordinance. And I guess perhaps for discussion, maybe understanding how documenting some of these larger caliper trees may play a role in getting to a landscape number that is more palatable for the board, and maybe potentially, I guess, for discussion, perhaps just increase landscaping in some fashion. Perhaps it's not feasible to do it out in that parking area based on the use of the property in this particular applicant. So maybe we can be a little bit heavier in the vegetation in another area.
Mr. Chair, if you want to hear from staff on the trees, I'd be happy to provide some info that we looked at as well.
Yes, if you could.
So when we talk about possibility of a tree survey, it does not have to necessarily be in the middle of the parking lot, because I realize that there's design for a parking lot there. But you could have, it's up to the board's discretion, if you want to have a limited tree survey to survey the buffers to see where the root systems may be and preserving the trees along the buffer areas, and is there potential for maybe an increased buffering, because when we look at this, there will be a loss of the buffers on the sides. I know some of this area is already developed, but that's what staff was looking at. And I believe the peer reviewer, I talked with her after she sent her memo, and I kind of asked for some input on trees. And so she actually mentioned the board could have limited tree survey just in certain areas if you wanted to. It doesn't have to be over the entire site. Then the other thing about landscaped islands was to break up the parking to help with heat island effect. So those were the two items. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I'm more concerned about the buffering as well. I want to see landscaped islands as well. I guess starting with the buffering first. Again, we had a similar case. We weren't looking for all the large caliper trees over a significant portion of site, so that's, I don't think, my personal intent here as well, when areas are going to be clearly for paving. So I don't know, but board member thoughts on buffering and tree caliper recognition and fencing? I guess while we're at it, the fencing, the chain link fence on the front seems like it's, I don't know, it's not a correctional facility. I feel like some other more visually simulating fencing could be used, but just thinking overall big picture, I guess, at this point. But Jeff, you had some thoughts?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I mean, yeah, I have thoughts, and it's kind of a toss-up when I was there, and I was trying to be very aware because we knew it was going to be a massive area of impervious surface of pavement. And looking at the buffering at that kind of the northern easterly side, I mean, the majority of that is what we just talked about, offices of tradesmen, and it's outside storage, and you know, it looks like it's not a very appealing neighbor, and I don't know either way which one will be of less impact, but I mean, this one is going to be nicely paved and a mix of trucks. I understand your concerns about the islands, and I would agree trying to break up would typically make sense, but the nature of their business is they're trying to drive, you know, 53-foot boxes around a yard that they're trying to store them in, so they have to keep, you know, the turning radiuses that we're always talking about, they have to maintain that to get them in and out of their storage aisles, and unfortunately, it needs a lot of area and pavement to do that. And so trying to understand, you know, what their goals are to be welcomed into our community. And I think they've done a lot on the front, the street view, to make it look like a nice welcoming facility, some green space. And to the point, one of your conceptual drawings, I was kind of like, well, geez, how are your customers going to know you're there? I don't know what you were going to do for a sign, but it looked like you kind of blended in, and it was really set back. I get that the back, obviously, is this mass of asphalt, but it's the nature of what they need. And none of this discussion comes up when we look at residential or passenger auto dealerships. You know, we just kind of skip right over that, or maybe we'll give them a 3-foot island that's got some mulch in it that, you know, unfortunately might catch on fire if somebody throws a cigarette into it or something. But when I think of a large parking lot and having something to break up the island effect, I think of some fairly massive plantings, you know, something that's, you know, 20, 30 feet wide that can have a significant tree to offer some shade, none of which works very well for an applicant that's worrying about snow removal, that's worrying about maneuvering large vehicles. So I'm trying to find this happy medium in my mind. And when I looked at those sidelines and the mapping of the trees, I didn't really see a lot of trees that I felt like met 24 inches in breast height, and nor the ones that looked fairly healthy. And so I'm trying to weigh out, if we go to the applicant and say, okay, go ahead and map these trees, we want you to preserve these trees, and they have a target goal of how many storage spots that they want on their site, are they going to have to kind of funnel and start disturbing more of the back, more sensitive areas, which I'd rather not see them do. So I'm just trying to weigh that out. And I know we have our diligence to try to, you know, protect the neighborhood and street appeal, but it is the Route 1 corridor, and I think that the appeal that I'm seeing here from the street view is much greater than some of the other projects that have been recently constructed out there, especially with our 600-foot setback from the road for residential use. I don't know, I'm kind of torn. I'd like to, I guess, hear in depth from other board members if they have really great concerns about the buffering or interior islands. When you think about if this was your business, and how are you going to maximize the dollars that you're investing in our community, and then what's it going to cost you the long-term dollar of maintaining and plowing and trying to keep those trees alive if they're surrounded by 300 feet of impervious surface? You know, how do they get the nutrients that they need? I just don't know. I hate to have them redesign and put a big planter in only to find the trees die in 5 years, and then they have a mud hole because people are driving the trucks through it. I'm kind of torn a little bit, so I'm interested what my fellow board members have to say on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Jim?
Well, I'm very impressed with the proposal for the front of the building. I mean, that'll look stunning. And I thought the same thing Jeff did, like, how are they going to find you? Because your building is set so far back. But if the trees, if you can make that landscape proposal work, it's a real credit to your proposal and your thinking, but also it's a wonderful asset to the city. So the rest of the buffering, you know, would it be nice if there are some larger trees, you know, within 10 feet of the property line around that could be saved? I think the landscape architect mentioned that. That would be great. And so maybe that would be helpful. But in terms of any buffering or vegetation or anything in the parking lot itself, I agree with Jeff. I just don't think that makes sense when you're trying to maneuver large vehicles around. It's really counterproductive, and it actually might make the parking lot much less effective and storing less vehicles, and it sort of negates one of the reasons you're coming down to Saco in the first place. So I guess I'm not as concerned about the buffering in the back, although I think we should try to protect some trees along the edges. But I really don't think we need trees in the middle, because I think it could be more of a hazard, frankly.
Thank you, Jim.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I agree with both Jeff and Jim. I'd like to see as many larger trees preserved around the perimeter and plantings around the perimeter, and I know you've already proposed that. And certainly the green areas in the back of the lot, maintain those as close to their natural state as possible. I know some of those areas are wetlands, so you're not going to be able to do much there anyways. But that certainly provides a buffer for the back of the property. And I know on this, well, this is a little bit of an old aerial photograph because you have a couple of things missing here, but you know, there's not much out behind here now. And you, even if something is built out behind you, you've got a huge buffer out back. So you know, and I agree, there's plenty of curb appeal. So my only concern would be the perimeter. Maintain as much green around the perimeter as possible so it's not just fencing.
Thank you, Joyce. Any other thoughts? Carrie Lynn?
No, I think I agree 100%. Keeping as much natural buffering as possible is key, and I agree that adding anything to the parking lot kind of causes a little bit more of a heartache for the drivers. Oops. So I think I'm on board with everybody that's said the same thing. I don't want to repeat the same thing.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Should we, I'm kind of getting everyone has the same opinion, should we consider having a limited tree inventory done within 15 feet of the property line on the proposed impervious surface area so that we have a sense if there are anything particular that might need to be saved, and that would offer, that's as close as we can get to offering some shade for the heat island effect. Just with two recommendations, both the peer review, landscape, and conservation, should we at least entertain that enough to ask for a limited inventory in those areas?
Yeah, I could support that. Did you say 15 feet, or?
Well, I threw out 15 just as an additional buffer, just in case their judgment of 10 feet. I mean, they're going to map out where they are. We could do either. I mean, the recommendation was 10 feet, but.
I guess I agree to a point. I guess the area, 10 feet's not a whole lot of space. We're further than 10 feet apart ourselves. I think that should push the 25 to, 35 foot range. Yeah, I think along the edge, understanding that would be nice. I guess for me, my biggest concern, I think, is sort of that that first wedge where the building sits. We have that, there's that nice line across the plan there, and that first edge is sort of the key component for me, and it just appears, looking at the demolition plan, there aren't any trees in that area. That's pavement. That's where the drive-in was, and that's where we would park. So there's no vegetative buffer in there. There's a stone wall we observed while we were there. So I guess I'd like to see if we could tighten up on that, soften that whole area. Once we're back further in the site, it's trailer storage, it's parking. That's the intent. That, as you said, that's the point of the project here. This is what the applicant's looking for. Just looking at some of the turning movements that they presented, it seems like maybe on the back of the building there's opportunity to have some vegetation back there, and again, just kind of tighten the sides there, right? To try to, get some vegetation back from those islands. Putting islands out there, I agree, it's not really viable for this particular type of project, but I don't want to start a precedent that we're not gonna, we're just gonna not let islands, we're gonna let islands go. So, yeah, I don't think we need a whole, tree schedule throughout the whole property, but along the edge, something that clearly defines or gives us the understanding of what's there. I don't know if 25 feet's the number or 50 feet. Of course, I'm going to say if we say 25 and then all the big trees show up at 26 feet, that's, I don't know, does that make sense, Matt?
I think so. You're just looking for the significant, is it just I guess just clarifying what's to be mapped, I know 24-inch in diameter was mentioned, or?
Yeah, so 24-inch caliper trees along the property line at, I don't know, plus or minus 25 feet in that range.
The side setback's at 20, so I think you could,
So let's say 20.
no, I mean, 25 or 30 works, in my opinion, just.
Yeah, let's say at the setback line. I think that's fine. We can justify that.
And is it mostly just along this northern side? Because we are leaving a bit more on the southern side of the property here.
My opinion would be both, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I think for our due diligence, I would say both as well. Any property line that has pavement. The renderings helped. It was good to see the screening. It's just a lot of pavement. I know that's the project, but it's just a lot of pavement, that's all. Any other thoughts or concerns from board members? There was a comment from the landscape architect that talked about slats, I believe, within the chain link fence or additional vegetation. Do board members have any thoughts on that comment? Trying to find that note.
Are you talking about privacy panels at the top of page 2?
Yeah, there it is.
Provide privacy panels on proposed fencing or supplemental plantings where there's not an adequate on-site buffer.
Yeah. And I guess at least for me, it's not my intent to have the whole property fenced with those. I am suspecting she's speaking of those green slats you put in the chain link fence.
But it
I
sounds
don't
like
think those are
she's-
successful.
yeah, she's talking about that if there aren't plantings.
Yeah. I'd rather see plantings. I mean, I think the nice thing about the chain link fence is there's some flexibility in maneuvering around some vegetation. But
But vegetation is more attractive than chain link fencing, is that what you're trying to say?
yeah, there's a great,
Because I agree.
yeah, there's a few facilities in Portland I can think of that have those slats that hide metal scrap yards. I don't think that, to Jeff's point, the architecture was updated. I think that works pretty well for the size building that there is. I don't think that's going to help elevate the project by putting those slats in a chain link fence. I'd rather just see a chain link fence.
Mr. Chair, I would
Go ahead.
agree. I mean, because we talk about design characteristics, we're going to have a 700-foot-long chain link fence. It's all green, and then the next thing would be is there security concerns, because it's kind of a gated area back there. And if we start asking for chain link fence and vegetation, is it going to get to the point where you can use the vegetation to get over the chain link fence? I mean, they're wanting to come to Saco and have a secured area, and I understand that piece of it, and we're trying to find a line of buffering. So maybe once we get a visual of the tree inventory, we'll have a better sense of how large the gaps will be.
Yep. Any other questions or thoughts from board members? I think it might be the property just adjacent to the site that has some fencing that I don't think is successful in that area as well. So maybe that's what I'm thinking. Okay, so circling back here, we're going to do a little bit of inventory on large caliper trees along the property line, 20 feet from the property line along areas of pavement. Go see if there's, I guess, if there's additional opportunity for landscaping, maybe in the immediate vicinity of the building that doesn't impede, turning movements and the tractor trailer flow. I guess I would like. And then the wash bays, touching base with wastewater, and coordinating with Emily's office on any other review regarding that. Is there anything else, board members, that would like more info on?
Mr. Chair, may I ask a couple questions?
Yes.
So you want, just to be clear, 24-inch caliber trees, or was it 20-inch caliber trees?
I'm sorry, I think we were trying to coordinate and agree with the letter from the landscape architect here. So I think she mentions 24 inches and above.
Okay, and then along 20 feet or so of the property line?
I think, given the 20-foot setbacks, I think 20 feet works.
Okay. Then the wash bays review, and then some things I heard from the planning board, I just want to make sure the applicant is prepared. If the landscaping standards are not going to be met, then a waiver is usually requested. So if that's something that the planning board should come back with, they should just be alerted to that.
That is a question, yeah. If that 10% internal landscaping cannot be met, does it require a waiver?
It requires a waiver,
Yeah,
yep.
so,
I guess
Yes.
to kind of clarify that, my understanding of the ordinance was it was for parking facilities, not necessarily storage areas, and I know the term gets used interchangeably, but it is kind of a different in that we're not parking necessarily passenger vehicles, and I believe that's the intent of the ordinance is more of your standard landscaped islands and parking facilities, and I guess getting a little bit of clarification on that. Because I do believe we meet the 10% if you were to just look at the front area of the facility and where we actually have, pedestrian parking. Not necessarily material or product storage.
So I think what I heard from board members, just in discussion, if I can, Mr. Chair, was that you didn't want there to be precedent of like not following landscaping ordinance. So this would be a way that the board can say under an exceptional circumstance, something was waived if the applicant brings that information forward. I saw trailer parking out there when I was out there, so it was not just storage of trailers that I saw, it was also trailer parking in some areas of the site.
yes, I feel if we review this as a parking area under that criteria in that Article 10, and if the 10% isn't met and the applicant requests a waiver that the board can review, I think the board, in the discussions to date, seems to be in agreement that a waiver of such requirement would be, applicable for a project like this. I think that would be an appropriate finding of fact as well, and is clear that we've reviewed it under that criteria and not, I don't know, that it seems better to, I guess, review it that way, maybe a little bit conservative, but I guess just my thought. I guess additionally, if it's, maybe we can get clarity from code officer or Tim Murphy if necessary.
I think this is up to how the board interprets it, because we have storage and also vehicle storage. Certainly we can ask Tim, but it looks like our landscape peer reviewer also interpreted it that way.
Okay.
But sounds like there was discussion about it and not too much concern, so we just document that
Okay.
a standard wasn't met.
All right, well, I think the waiver is the appropriate course then. Any other thoughts from board members? So we've held the public hearing. We've continued the public hearing to August 13th for the time being, and provided some direction. A few items here for the applicant to touch up on, but other than that, any final thoughts? Jeff?
So, Mr. Chair, I guess playing with what you just discussed with Emily, would it make sense if they kind of denote what their storage area is? I mean, an area that's specifically designed. I mean, I view it in my head is a container box or a Connex box, as a shipping container that was currently on site during a site walk, would be deemed something that's in storage. It can't physically be transported without an additional component. As to where the trailers that they had, the new trailers, could be registered and very quickly roll down the road being hitched to a tractor. So if they differentiate, are we only doing 10% of their quote-unquote parking areas for the new and service trailers? And wherever they designate the storage container, then that is now a storage area. I mean, I'm assuming they must have a special piece of equipment that will pick and move the storage containers, or double stack them, like some yards do, versus just sliding them on like a tilt deck lowboy or something. So, but I mean, does that help with us navigating the ordinance and we define where they're setting their storage and where they're parking? If they highlighted that on the plan for us.
Yeah, I think that's a good question, Jeff. I'm not sure if I have the answer for that right away. I guess my first thought is if we define it, if there are two definitions there, if there's outdoor storage and then the parking, then we review and address them as such and apply the standards to each in lieu of a parking area that has trailers that are there for X amount of times. I'm not sure. I'm trying to quickly get some definitions here of storage, but do you have any thoughts on that, Emily, as far as storage versus, storage area versus a parking area? I mean, I know in the ordinance in some uses we're pretty specific about what you can store and what you can't store and when you can and when you can't. So I don't want that to create a hardship for the particular, for the end user here.
My take on it, if you're asking me, is that it's impervious area where you could, at this point, you could either park a car or park a trailer. So it's, to me, it meets the requirement of having to have landscaped islands. So the conservative view is that if the requirement's not gonna be met, then, and they're not planning on doing it, then the waiver should be submitted and the board should review it as a waiver request. If you want me to get an attorney opinion, I would be happy to do so as well.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if it, I think that's a interesting analysis Jeff brought up about, the boxes maybe are storage, they're not parking. But before we have to go too far down that road, if, no matter how we classify these, if they're gonna need a waiver anyway, we might as well just do the waiver. And then we don't have to get into that entire discussion of classifying what sort of vehicles they have and, can they move one down the road or are they just boxes? And we're probably gonna work much harder than we need to resolve that one. So it doesn't sound like granting a waiver would be that difficult in this instance, but, that would probably be the easiest course to take, it seems to me, to address the problem.
Yeah. Thank you, Jim. I agree. I see in our ordinance here, we have within outdoor storage, it talks about outdoor storage of vehicles or other equipment, waiting repairs is prohibited. Vehicles displayed for sale are not to be construed as outdoor storage. So if all of the equipment in storage and boxes and trailers are for sale as part of this business, then it's not storage. So I think the best course is for a waiver if the 10% can't be met. So with that, perhaps a motion to continue to August 13th.
So move, Mr. Chair.
Is that so? Jim has made a motion to continue the Jim's made a motion to continue the hearing of this application to August 13th.
Mr. Chair, I believe we already voted on that.
We continued the public, yes, we continued the public hearing.
Okay.
So maybe perhaps I'll restate Jim would make a motion to continue the application review to August 13th.
And that's what I meant, Mrs. Chair, to continue the application review till August 13th.
Okay, great, thank you.
And I'll second.
Second
And the
by
applicant
Joyce.
has some clarification as to homework.
So motion made and seconded to continue application review to August 13th. Any additional discussion? Those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you. Is there anything else on this item, Emily, to address?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, continuing with our applications this evening and our agenda items. We have 40 Buxton Road, map 88, lot 10, and this is for a storage building for Saco Schools presented by Haley Ward. This is a continued application of completeness review and public hearing for a site plan amendment for a storage building at the Saco Middle School in the West Residential District. You have anything to add on this one, Emily?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The applicants just provided responses since the last meeting. There were several requests made from board members, and so we have that available in the meeting packet. I'm sure they can speak to it as well. And I just do want to mention it is after 9:30, so the board will need to take a motion at some point to continue.
Yes, thank you.
The longer we go, the less chance that he has to ride home in the rain.
So, yes, thank you. To Emily's keen eye, it is 9:32, and we would need a motion to continue beyond 9 o'clock.
Do we have even an applicant?
We have an application. I don't believe the applicant is here this evening.
He was, yeah, Lisa's checking.
Oh, okay. I would, with the applicant here or not, we can continue with the review, correct?
No, if the applicant's not here, I recommend that you continue it. The
Okay.
applicant should be in the meeting room when you talk about.
Okay, all right. I just want to make sure. So,
I mean, Mr. Chair, can we clarify
well,
regarding 352 North Street then, if 40 bucks? I'm not sure. I'm not sure who he's here for.
so Emily, go ahead.
I'm sorry, what?
So we have, our next item is 40 Buxton Road, and that is represented by Haley Ward. Our agenda item after that is 352 North Street, and that project is represented by Teradyne Consultants. So we have, it's 9:30, so we should have a motion to continue if the board would like. And it appears that the applicant for 40 Buxton Road is not with us this evening, so that would need to be tabled. The applicant for 352 North Street is here this evening to provide an update. So if the board is willing, I think we could continue.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I move to continue past 9:30 to continue on the agenda items on our list this evening. and seeing that the applicant for agenda item G is no longer here, I move to table that item.
Thank you for the motion, Jeff.
Second.
Second by Jim. So motion made to continue agenda items this evening beyond 9:30 and to table item G, 40 Buxton Road, to the next meeting on July 29th.
Yes, please.
Any discussion? Those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes. So we'll continue with our next item, H, 352 North Street. This is map 84, lot 2. This is a proposed 130-room hotel with associated site improvements for Northern Hospitality presented by Teradyne Consultants. This is a continued application review and continued public hearing. This is for a site plan and an amendment for a proposed 19,000 square foot, 5-story hotel in the business industrial zoning district. Do you have anything to add to that, Emily?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We added for your meeting packet tonight the traffic impact study as well as traffic peer review, as well as a city engineer peer review memo. The applicant has those and is working on responses. Diane Morabito, our traffic peer reviewer, did note left-hand turn lane capacity, so the applicant's kind of going back and doing some analysis with our traffic engineering folks, so I'm sure you'll hear from him on that. Also, pump station details, the applicant has made some progress on like bringing forward pump station details and is working on addressing those as well. So a lot of work going on, and we are anticipating that we have it tentatively scheduled for your July 29th meeting. We know that there's a few items to be wrapped up, but the applicant is diligently pursuing those and has responded to everything they can so far. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Tim, thank you for staying with us. Do you have anything else to
Chairman,
add?
member of the board, planning staff, Tim Misha with Teradyne. So just a quick note, so I've been here a while, right? So I stepped out, it was a beautiful evening out. The door's locked on me. Emily's got a text message on her phone that I'm outside. And I didn't have my phone on me, so someone from Sebago texted. Even the sky decided to drop out there. So we've got like an inch of rain out there right now, right? There's a whole thunderstorm coming through. So I'm just hanging at my truck right by the door waiting for someone to finally come out, right? So anyway, I'm not leaving. I'm not leaving. We're going to have this thing one way or another. So, yeah, that's just happened.
Now we know what happened to the 40 Buxton Road people.
Yeah.
Are we trapped outdoors?
So anyway, as we all are aware, that we are scheduled for the 29th, and I want to thank the city staff and the board for accommodating that. I know it has something to do with the applicant and her funding situation and construction timing and things like that. So I just want to give a brief overview of where we are. So we have city engineer's comments. We've responded to those between the architect and the engineer. We're ready to resubmit that. The architect is in the final, literally, conversations with the fire department they requested to have 2 fire department connections and enunciators and knock boxes, and just squaring away where that's going to be. We might be adding another concrete sidewalk pathway to one of the fire department connections, depending on where this all lies. So this will be taken care of tomorrow. So we'll get the architect's package, renderings, building elevations, floor plans. My package is ready to go back to Joe, and so then we'll be resubmitting that back through Emily. As far as Diane's review letter goes, the traffic engineers have said that they're all in agreement for the hotel, for the traffic study. The issue is, if there was another phase for the water park, the Turnpike Authority's left-hand turn lane as designed that will be constructed later this summer, this fall. For the new hotel, the queue is full for the left turn lane. And so the traffic engineers are working with the Turnpike Authority to work on their modeling. Our traffic engineers are using some of the Turnpike Authority modeling. So they're trying to work through that modeling. Diane had pointed something out. And they're going to try to lengthen that queue now. So that's being worked out. So that's really the only issue as far as Diane's letter. So I think basically she's approved it, and they're just going to do continuance on that left turn lane.
And that, Tim, that's the left turn lane into this property?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep, and so there's a dedicated left turn lane that the MTA is putting in. It's just for the new hotel that the queue is full.
And did I read that correctly, that it was it 7 feet? Or was
Yes. So I believe everyone's saying that that's fine, but everyone's just thinking ahead.
Right, so the discussion is just to extend the queue lane, the left turn queue lane, 7 feet.
I think it really comes down to pavement striping.
Sure, yeah, okay.
So that's what's
it's not even a whole car.
Correct.
It's
So I
barely a
think
motorcycle.
that what they're saying is that since it's only 7 feet, that's fine for this traffic study. Everyone's in it, it's okay, but
Sure.
Diane wants them to look ahead for the next phase of the project potentially, and work with the MTA on that now.
Yeah.
Which just makes sense, right?
Yep.
So they're working on that. As far as the pump station goes, we have kind of switched gears a little bit, and we've teamed up with the water recoveries, basically consultant and supplier for the city. This is something that Howard has been kind of pushing. There was confusion. Howard's guy, he had left the company that we were dealing with. And so we had stayed with them. And then Howard finally got to looking at some of the submission requirements because Raleigh had left, and there were some questions and stuff. And so Emily and Howard and I, we met here about a week and a half ago, and so we switched gears. And so we're looking to have a complete design done in the next week and a half or so that meets all the city requirements, because this is the guy that literally installs and does all the maintenance and all the pump stations in the city. So we've working to shift gears on that. So we should have a package that is easily approvable by the Water Recovery Department. And then Joe, the city engineer, has comments on to add more details on our plans for like the wet well and a situation like that. So we're working to wrap that situation up as quickly as we can. Hopefully have that for the 29th. So having said that, those are basically, I think, the loose items that we have. So we're diligent working on trying to get a package back to Joe, get a package back to Howard, and have more information for when we meet the next time on the traffic. So maybe we want to consider a condition that the left turn lane be figured out prior to issuance of something. I'm not sure what that is at the moment.
Okay. Yeah.
But I can have more information on that.
Yeah, you'll bring that to us on the 29th.
Right.
Yeah, great.
Yeah. So essentially, that's all I have for the evening, and I want to request to be continued to the 29th, I guess.
Sure. Any other questions from board members? Jeff?
I have a question. I mean, I understood clearly what Diane was getting at, the left turn lane, the 7 feet long, and not so much for the applicant, but I think it's for us as a board, is that our peer review mentioned a couple times that, you know, a lot of these assumptions in this whole area are based on the Turnpike Authority's modeling, right? So we have a lot of things that are kind of in flux and moving in here, and now that our peer reviewer is saying, hey, yes, I think we need to be careful and start breathing. I'm not saying this particular project, right, because I think they're working very diligently to get through this, but when we look at the whole side of Saco that's funneling through there, sometimes this take a minute and breathe and let's see how these calculated engineered models build out is important. And I just wanted to point out it's not very often that Diane picks up on something like that and kind of reiterates a couple times, hey, this is based on the assumption, you know, so much of what they do in their engineering world is, these are the formulas, these are the tables that we use in our standards books. So, you know, I don't want to delay this, but I just think we as a board need to be aware that it's come through, and, you know, we've got the filling station that's on the corner there that looks like they're doing some, you know, planning for, and there's a lot of stuff going on here, and,
So a level of comfort, though, could be that for the Phase 2 project traffic movement permit, you've got the Turnpike model that the DOT has to agree with and sign off in order for the traffic engineers to use in their model for the water park. So you've got a lot of different entities looking at that same model to come to an agreement that, okay, that meets what's going on out on that section of 112.
Yeah, and a little bit to your point, that doesn't quite happen doesn't happen often like that, is what you're getting at.
Correct. There's a lot of people looking at that model.
Sure.
sure,
Because it's a DOT permit at the end of the day. It's not a Turnpike permit, it's a DOT permit.
correct. But I mean, I'm also just thinking that Phase 2 could be, you know, I don't know how soon your client's looking at it, but that could be presented when we start to see some actual functionality of the Turnpike interchange, right? I mean,
Oh, yes.
and so that means we've had all these really brilliant minds looking at it, but we as the people who use it every day start to see how it's playing out. And I just wanted to point out that I picked up that Diane had pointed out a few times that it's all based on a really good assumption, and it sounds like she might have some reservations so that it might be accurate that she put it in there like that. That's all.
Yeah, and given the discussion we had with her last, and sort of that extra explanation, I think was good as well. Yeah.
But that all will be ironed out in the DOT traffic movement permit for this.
Yeah.
For this application here, it's just a traffic study
Yeah.
with approval from Diane.
Yeah.
That essentially is signed off on.
Sure.
So I think, I mean, those are the loose items that we're trying to
Great.
wrap up right now.
All right. Thank you, sir. Jeff?
Mr. Chair, no other discussion. I move to continue this application review to the July 29th meeting, please.
Thank you for the motion, Jeff.
I'll second that.
Thank you for the second, Jim. Motion made to continue the public hearing and application review on this item to July 29th. Any additional discussion? Those in favor, Jim?
Yes.
Carrie Lynn?
Yes.
Joyce?
Yes.
Jeff?
Yes.
I vote yes as well. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you, members of the board.
All right, continuing, Emily, any general correspondences to address this evening?
No, thank you.
We did review your update on the 184 Simpson Road quarterly traffic monitoring report. We saw that, and that was favorable. That met all the expectations, so that was good. Do we have a date for the next one as well? We were going to do 2. We were going to kind of catch up on that one, right?
Yeah, we're going to do a total of 4 this year, and what we're gonna do is have Diane really plan, when she does the counts or when her team does the counts. And she does not tell the business, nor does she tell me when the date is to do those counts, so that it stays as a sampling, like
Sure.
a sampling exercise as much as possible.
Yeah.
So I don't have the exact date, but I have reiterated that we need to make sure that the counts are done for 4 total times this year.
Great. Thank you.
Mr.
Jim?
Chair, could I just ask a question so I understand what I'm looking at when I read those traffic counts? You know, it didn't, well, one of the days it looked like there were quite a few people arriving, and then the other day it looked like there wasn't much happening at all. And so I don't know if this suggests that there's lots of people going to the school, and that means that it's more likely that the left turn lane would be created for Simpson Road, or do numbers like this suggest that now there's really not that many people that go to the school, so really don't need the left turn lane? What, can you help me understand what this means?
So the left turn lane is warranted even if, like, one report says that maybe the counts were lower or something. It's still warranted. And the left-hand turn lane, that's a good question. Sorry, if I can, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, of course, please.
That's a good question. And we actually have been approved, the city's been approved for a business partnership initiative, and the left turn lane will be constructed using a BPI grant. So the ecology school will be paying a third, the city will be paying a third, and the DOT will be paying a third. This has been approved through council. The last third that the city is putting up will get paid back over about a 20-year period by the applicant to pay the taxpayers back. So the question of whether or not something is warranted they're moving forward to do it. We had a kickoff meeting to start the process with the engineer to get this moving forward. As far as like this report, the primary pieces are what Diane outlines here, which is that from a 2021 or 22 agreement, I just don't have the dates off the top of my head. The condition for the left turn lane was changed, and it requires ongoing quarterly traffic monitoring from 2000, I believe 22, but one of the board members can correct me, till the completion of the construction of that turn lane. So the turn lane is supposed to be constructed by November 2025. So as a result of that, monitoring is supposed to be done every quarter, every year by the applicant as part of that site plan amendment. And if you need the date, I can certainly provide that. We have the approval letters.
Right, no, I guess I was just curious because I've tried to follow the city council meetings too, and I saw the meeting where that partnership agreement was reached, and I thought that was a pretty interesting solution. But I just was curious as to why, I mean, I know it was a requirement that these quarterly traffic studies be done, but it just doesn't seem to serve a purpose if the left turn lane's already going to be constructed. Like, why do they keep doing these counts?
Yeah,
Why do we have Diane doing this?
So I think, so the applicants asked me when we'll stop these counts, and my response to the applicant was once the left-hand turn lane is constructed and in operation. But if the board wanted to stop them beforehand, we would just have to check the condition of approval and see if that's something that needs to be formally amended. I believe that it was until construction, but I'd have to check it. Or until, like, the left-hand turn lane was
Right.
operational.
And it was,
Jim, I think it's because, oh, sorry, Matt, go ahead.
go ahead.
Because if they exceeded the allowable trips, they would have to cut back on their programming until the left-hand turn lane was built. So it's related to their programming, and there were concerns that, I mean, they had very high hopes for this ecology school when it first opened, and there were concerns that there just wasn't the capacity to handle the traffic, and this was a way of controlling the traffic.
I mean, living on the Simpson Road, I'm very familiar with this, and I just didn't see a purpose in the traffic studies, but that is a very sensible purpose, so I understand, and so, thank you.
Yeah, the facility has much more capacity than it's being utilized right now, in part because of that left turn lane, because the traffic was a large concern when we reviewed it. Yeah. Well, thank you, Emily, for that update. Any comments from planning board members on anything planning board wise? Great. With that, it is 9:54, and we will adjourn. Thank you, everyone.